northern border of the Deccan Empire, Hershey Province. They were constantly attacked by the evil kingdom of Icarus, known to the people as the descendants of the Black Wolves. This empire is blocked from the west by a dense forest, filled with monsters and wild animals. In the entire Deccan Empire, which has conquered the eastern continent, there is no place more dangerous than Hershey. This is the province where the Versace family rules. They are called the Guardians of Deccan. They have raised many generations of great swordsmen, but soon all this will be forgotten. The crown prince will be poisoned, and the Versace family will have a hand in it. That's exactly what Olivia Versace will do. Because of her large frame, she created the image of a future villain. And this villainess is now admiring herself in the mirror. What Olivia are we talking about? The girl's name is Hanbi. One day, she woke up and found herself in her favorite novel. Usually, when this happens, the time traveler takes the place of one of the main characters, but for some reason, she got the villain instead. Not just a villain, but also so fat that nose and lips compressed by hamster cheeks, you can't tell her apart from a bun. This drooping double chin is even more hideous. This dull hair, she looks like some kind of wild boar. She was once really cool, graduated from the police academy, and became a detective. Thanks to her training, she was able to create the body of her dreams, which all the men around her craved. Until yesterday, she was 30-year-old Hanbi, so she doesn't understand why the hell she ended up in a teenager's body, and also the one who will have to be executed for murder. She was very angry. She was not at all happy with this development of events. Then the maids knocked on her door and said that they had brought breakfast for Mrs. Olivia. There were still 2 whole years left before the character's death, so she had plenty of time, but there was absolutely no motivation. She just ate, slept, and had fun. Why the hell should she do anything? She would be executed in 2 years anyway. 3 months passed, and the girl overate again, so much so that she couldn't even move, and it was also difficult for her to finish the joke. She didn't understand at all what she should do if she knew that in 2 years, she too would be executed. Still, she realized that overeating was not the best option in this situation. She needed to get a grip on it. It will be difficult for her, but she needs to take care of herself if she wants to become better. Then she needs to start doing sports. Maybe she should start taking fencing lessons. It's really hard, she's all covered in fat. She needs to lose it first and then build up her muscles. Daisy Meridian is the head maid of the Versace family. Suddenly, one of the maids called Daisy and said that she needed to come with her quickly. She shouted to the maid that Olivia had started running. Having lost weight, Olivia's face has become much more beautiful. If she is a villain, she is the most charming one. And all this thanks to her strict diet. After all, she needs to maintain her image. After business on the border, her father and brother return to the estate. Count Gerald Versace is Olivia's brave but slightly stupid father. Dad threw himself into her arms and shouted with a smile, "Because she looks just like your mother." Olivia's brother Kyle Versace says that she is like her daughter. And of course, Olivia has something of her mother in her. I felt somehow offended because he was so happy just because she finally lost weight. Now that she's gotten herself into shape, her father thinks she should start taking care of the family business, and he wants her to take over Hershey and get things in order there. Olivia was absolutely delighted, and her brother remarked that he also hoped that she could do it. He and his father will have to go to the border again to deal with the monsters in the forest. Her father asked with a trembling voice if Olivia could really handle this. The girl said that, of course, she would succeed. She was confident in herself. At least she will try to do so. Suddenly, someone called Mrs. Olivia, and she turned around to see a man and a woman. They told her that frosts had come. All the crops had died. Practically nothing was growing. They didn't even have time to save the potatoes. Everything had frozen. If they don't do something, then in the winter, all the inhabitants of Hershey will die of hunger. Olivia doesn't even know what they should do to survive, and it will be hard to call it life. The man said that if it weren't for these taxes, they would have been able to hold out. The lady noted that these people were very kind and polite. But then Olivia herself thought about what she was thinking about. Now she should take care of herself. She herself would soon die. She spent the entire year getting things going in Hershey. It was hard to do it alone, so she found herself a loyal assistant. Once again, she approached him and told him to write a report regarding the tax cuts in the province of Hershey. The cold weather there was very severe. Olivia had no idea what she was wasting her time on. She was going to die soon, so another year had passed. While the lady was busy, a maid came running to her and informed her that the Imperial delegation would soon arrive. The girl was in shock. The maid quickly informed her that her father wanted to see her right now. But first, she had to take a bath. It all happened so fast that Olivia didn't even have time to think about it. The maid was already choosing a suitable outfit for her. After that, she chose two options and began asking the lady which one she liked better. When the mistress made her choice, the maid Daisy remarked that it was an excellent choice, and the lord really knew how to present himself in the best light. This maid really got on the mistress's nerves with her pretense. For some reason, she is always so happy. After that, they got together and went to the girl's father. The events of the novella begin when Olivia turns 17. She must be sent to the Imperial Palace to become the Crown Prince's favorite, and she will also be sent to study at the academy. Everything is really true. True, she is not yet familiar with any principles, and nothing has been discussed about the academy. It seems that through her actions, she was able to avoid all of this. Olivia thought that if she didn't act like in the novel, the plot would go differently. Well, now the Imperial delegation is coming to Hershey. The girl greeted her father with a smile and noted that she was told that he had called her. Now Olivia needs to find out what the hell they're all here for. Brother asked why it was taking so long, and father asked that it go faster. Olivia noted that she had urgent matters to attend to, so she apologizes for being late. She also asked what it was she didn't want to hear, that he was saying that it was somehow connected with the prince and the academy. The girl relied on it because it was for her, and asked if she could read it. The father approached her and said that this letter was from the emperor himself. The girl was in complete horror, and the boy shouted that her father could not send her there. Olivia asked to let her guess whether she had really been summoned to the imperial court. Father was very proud of her. She was their everything, their real pride. The brother noticed that his little sister was quite smart, but Olivia thought that they were just dumb. Both father and brother are like children. They are very easily impressed. The family that brings the most valuable interface of the monsters that spring on their lands will have the chance to send one of their daughters as a candidate for the crown prince's favorite. This is just some stupid and meaningless request period. The father noted that the crown prince is very cunning period. He added back that he was very cunning, so she shouldn't go to him. Actually, there is another reason it is still a typical story, where the main character and the main heroine fall in love with each other. Everything has already been decided who else, but Olivia should know about it. It's very saccharine. Olivia turned to Haman and asked me if he thought his father and brother were already worrying too much. The man admitted that he agreed with the lady. The girl was grateful to him, and looking out the window, noticed that the weather was very good. It was very beautiful outside the window. She looked out the window while they were arguing among themselves. She didn't try to fix herself up, but she's far from that kind of beauty. Olivia decided to write a letter to the prince on her own behalf. It was with him that the plot of the novella began, but the content of the letter is now completely different. Olivia is very embellished in it. Every word is filled with such arrogance. Olive is absolutely sick of what is written. This letter is terrible. After this, the prince is unlikely to call her to the palace. This was all her father and brother's idea. It's unclear how such idiots could come up with something like this. The brother said that if someone offended her, then she would challenge him to a duel this year and cut him down. The father said that if his son couldn't cope, then he would cut him down. They are just idiots. They don't understand politics or economics. They just want to kill and cut to pieces. It's no wonder Olivia became a villain. With some upbringing, this is basically normal. But it's okay, the girl will fix everything and find a better family, with a kind and faithful husband. To hell with old Olivia, she won't be a villain. And let the imperial family go to hell too. Both father and son were shocked by this. The girl said that they should give the imperial family the trophy that they asked for, and that they would no longer raise taxes if she became his favorite. Then they would be provided for anyway. The father noted that this sounded logical in principle, but in order to refuse them, they will also say that the girl has been very ill in recent years. And it doesn't matter that it will seem strange. Brother was of course not against it. He said that everything will be as sister says. But the father was not sure that he would not believe that she was sick. The girl was sure that they would believe it when they saw her portraits. A couple of years ago, she looked really disgusting. She's not blind. Her father understood her, so he asked Hammond to call the others. Then Chief Secretary Edwin joined them. Olivia recognized him immediately. He was teaching her how to work with papers. but she didn't quite understand who it was behind him. But when she looked closer, she realized that this was Daisy's older brother and Kyle's best friend. This is Daniel Meridian. He has model looks, built-in legs, a face that makes the heart fill with warmth. He became her first love and taught her how to handle a sword. Kyle asked why he was there, and Daniel reported that the Count had called him names. He also greeted the girl, and she understood that this meant that he remembered her. He was a real gentleman, and because of this, she was even a little embarrassed. The Meridian family, and when they have friends in them, they raised such a wonderful man. He makes you want to retire somewhere on the edge of the world, start a family and build a house. He's not a man, he's just a dream. Kyle asked where he was going. He had to ask his permission too. Olivia was very angry and did not understand how he dared to stop Daniel. The secretary turned to the gentleman and asked if they could find somewhere to be alone. The gentleman suggested that they go to the conference room, and the secretary said that it concerned payment for his services. The Count asked what was wrong with her. Meanwhile, Olivia had already run up to Daniel and started asking him how he was doing. Kyle found it necessary to ask what she was thinking and ordered her to let go of his hand immediately. Oh, Daniel has such muscles that Olivia just floats, and that dumbass Kyle is too arrogant to admit his beauty. Kyle included that he was her older brother, so she should listen to him. But in general, he can scream at the top of his lungs. She doesn't care because she's next to Daniel. She asked if he was hungry, and he also decided to ask about her. He has such a nice voice. If Olivia were to give him a rating, it would be a perfect score. Her older brother was beginning to think they were flirting. Father informed Olivia that they could not simply refuse the invitation of the Imperial family. The Emperor has considered their family his ally for many years, so her father asked her to come up with something, and her brother would take it that they trusted her completely. But she can't just leave and abandon everything. I'll leave her in the estate. Her father will appoint her brother to manage everything, and he's still an idiot here. This could have a bad effect on her future position and… So the girl said that she had already decided everything. Despite the loud and flattering words of the emperors in the letter, he didn't mention a word about how carefully they guarded their borders and destroyed the forests from monsters all those winters. This cannot continue any longer. They need to publicly declare their intention to pull troops to the borders. Father pointed out that they couldn't just abandon the land and go to the border. Kyle was also sure that the nobility would be against such a decision. He really is true this relationship to realize it in the north cannot be spoiled, although now it is quite safe there. Olivia pointed out that they were their comrades, so they should be offered to go to the border together. She suggested writing to the emperor, stating that the main task of the Versace family is to protect the borders, let him remember their past merits. They must show themselves from the best side. But the Count noted that he does not know opposing the will of the emperor. This is strange, but if they leave it like this, they will take Olivia in the yard. She will be like a prisoner. My father was simply horrified by this and said that this could not be allowed to happen. Her father promised that he would never allow it. As soon as the word captive was mentioned, her father immediately went crazy. But remembering the story, the way she was treated in the palace, really did feel like captivity. Even if the emperor expressed his will, it does not mean that they must follow it. They need to think carefully about it. Versace stayed Olivia's office. The head of the trade union noticed that the lady was somewhat late. Oscar noticed that she took on a lot of trouble. Secretary Sam approached the lady and asked if she needed anything. She suggested starting with his report, and then she would leave with Oscar. Oscar was surprised and asked again if she had any business of her own with the trade union. He asked where she was going anyway. Then the lady was very happy because she saw that Daniel had also come to her, and her muse came to her, so she was very happy and said that they needed to see how things were going with the newly built soap factory. She asked if he would go with her, and the gentleman said that they could have a bite to eat before leaving. He asked if she was worried about the negotiations with the Imperial delegation, and Olivia said that she was confident that her brother would sort everything out. He was a master negotiator. After all, he had spent 2 whole years studying this. After that, Daniel offered her a candy, and she was quite surprised. She told Daniel that she was no longer a little girl, and that a lady was supposed to be given flowers. Candy is actually quite nice. Daniel asked for forgiveness, but the girl said that she would still eat it. She didn't want to upset him. Daniel said with a smile that next time he would bring her both candy and flowers. The girl simply couldn't look at him because he was so handsome that he was practically shining. Daniel has forever captured Olivia's heart trading department. 2 years ago, Olivia turned to the merchant union for help organizing supplies and food in Hershey. To do this, it was necessary to build several trading departments. Things were going really badly here before. But soon, when Olivia took charge of everything, forming the necessary environment for the emperor, everything more or less got better. They're unloading something again. This is now the largest department store in the area. Before there were only a couple of people working here. The lady turned to Oscar and said that he needed to get to work already. He had to go to the main office already. But there is already someone to do the work for him. That's why the lady said that he has some kind of shitty attitude towards work. Oscar also remarked that Daisy liked hearing the lady swear. Olivia noted that he could complain about her. Only after that she would flood all their departments with supplies, and he certainly wasn't monitoring from work. That's why Oscar said he would keep quiet. He already had too little free time. The lady turned to the secretary and asked if they needed anything. Oscar was shocked because he was being ignored again. The secretary reported that workers were complaining about large accumulations of carts on the roads. Olivia said that before building roads, it would be better if they divided the city into commercial and residential areas. It would have to be spent, but that's how it is. The roads need to be built before they get clogged with water and sewage. She doesn't want workers damaging them while they're digging up the place. Sam said that everything would be as it said. But suddenly, the lady snatched the folder from his hands. The lady said that they should start working on the roads right after the sewerage and water supply. There is no time to waste. Now she will describe everything in more detail. And in a few minutes, she has already provided a plan and asked him to distribute the budget in such a way that you will see all the details. The secretary was completely shocked that she wrote everything down so quickly and in such detail. While working as a detective, she was often dumped with paperwork. So for her, this is a trifle, even despite the fact that there are no computers in this world. She copes with everything perfectly well on her own. Olivia said that it was time for them to get to work. You can't drink river water, it's too dirty. You need to build a special storage facility from where the water supply will come. The sewage could leak into the river. They can't risk that, because they don't want a pandemic to break out there. There won't be any such problems with the storage, so he himself thinks it's a great idea. Olivia told Oscar to tell her what he thinks, whether it would be cheaper if they bought the building materials in advance, or vice versa. But he soon noticed that it was better to do it right away, so she asked him to send Oscar the transcript himself when he finished. Now it's time for them to go to Debon. They need to see how things are going there. Debon is a former soap factory that was located near the slaughterhouse. Because of such a neighborhood, it had to be closed. Now it is used as a storage facility for animal oils. It was decided to build a new soap for the army in one of the poor areas. This was to provide jobs for Daisy, the head maid, who was appointed responsible for Debon. The idea for a new soap factory came from Miss Evans, who was a laundry worker, and she thought that animal fat could be used to make a lot of soap, which would be very helpful to them in the household. Olivia tagged in because it was a great idea, and asked if she knew what it took to make soap. This required ash-processed manure and sea salt, and with the help of Miss Evans, soap production began. Now she works at Debon too. Olivia asked how people were enjoying the products they were making at the new factory. She said that she wasn't very impressed by this knowledge. It was unlikely that they would be able to sell soap to them. But the lady did not understand why this was so. She was even a little outraged. The girl's acquaintance with Oscar is still a story. He always treated her like an adult. They met 2 years ago when she was 15 years old. The Department of Ship Trade, Maroon. The gentleman introduced himself. His name is Oscar Radar. He also apologized for his appearance. The lady believed that his boss had beaten him. The guy said that he had been working here for a long time, but they still kept delaying his payment. He had to do some bookkeeping. He didn't actually say that he just had to steal some stuff, but he was caught, and if it weren't for the lady, the boss would have definitely killed him. It seems like she saved his life. She doesn't remember him being in the novel. Therefore, the lady hoped that the plot of his rescue would not be greatly affected. He is incredibly lucky the lady wants to offer him a job for her, and that same day she took Oscar with her. And the next day she appointed him head of Maroony. Oscar was right. We just need soap, we humans. You know, the smell of it just makes you turn your nose up. Previously, when she bought it in bulk at the supermarket, she didn't even think about how difficult it was to cook. It's very difficult without the internet. You can't find normal ingredients anywhere. The secretary turned to the lady and said that Mrs. Daisy and Mr. Daniel had come to see her. The lady was very glad to see Daniel, and I informed her that the carriage would not make it to Sasna and that we would have to ride a horse. Therefore, they asked the lady to change her clothes before leaving. Sasna is a city that lost many soldiers who went to guard the borders. There was no talk of compensation for the loss of a breadwinner. All that was left for the widows' families was to sell the herbs growing in the Tozer Mountains. Daisy introduced the lady to the guy she told them to get acquainted. This is Gerald. He is in charge of construction. Olivia noticed that he did a great job. Daniel noted that the break had just happened, so he asks why the workers were still running. Here they distribute food to all those in need, the elderly children, and the sick. The lady asked for attention and said that he did not mention this in the report. Daisy thought it was unacceptable. The guy started saying that he just thought it would be better that way. The lady said that he spends their money and doesn't even tell them where he must leave personal interests aside and not hide what the budget is spent on. Gerald said that he didn't think of this to me, so he asks for forgiveness. It will not happen again. But Daisy also noted that he had acted nobly. He just shouldn't have hidden it and told her right away. He does the right thing by taking care of those in need. The gentleman was very grateful for her words. He said that she was not angry. Olivia really admired Daisy. She was a good girl, so the lady was proud of her. I'm not done here, but there's still something to do. Oscar asked what the lady was talking about, and she meant that it would be necessary to build a hospital here, but the residents most likely would not be able to pay for the treatment. They are relatives of fallen soldiers who defended their land. The hospital will be free. Oscar said that the idea is of course wonderful, but its implementation is not so good. The girl herself knows that she will have to spend money. He always has to pester her with his comments. She doesn't even let her think. I noticed that it is necessary to find an inexpensive doctor. Any doctor will be of benefit to these people, even without expensive drugs. There is no serious illness going around the city, but the health of citizens is far from normal. Everyone is walking around so gloomy. The girl had a hard day, and Oscar is also annoying her here, saying that gloom is not a reason to build a hospital. The lady was very tired, so she decided to lie down. It was very warm there, not as warm as when Daniel was next to her. She remembered asking him why he was refusing her and wanted to know the reason. Then Olivia asked him why he didn't want to become her boyfriend. Daniel said that he couldn't, but the lady was furious and didn't understand why. Daniel looked down and noted that bad rumors might start among the nobility. Besides, soldiers are needed at the border, which is why the lady burst into tears. She asked him to just know that she was annoying him, following him around all day long. He approached her and said that she was already 17 and would soon be married off, and he couldn't interfere with that. But then the lady said that she would only marry someone more valuable, or, does he really dislike her that much? The gentleman said that it was the other way around, so the lady calmed down a little. She asked again if this meant that he would become her gentleman, and he confirmed it. The gentleman asked if he was serious, and so Daniel gave her a word on his fingers. She asked him just not to leave and to always be with her, so Daniel promised her all this. After this, the lady woke up and saw Daniel in front of her. She immediately began to ask where he had disappeared to. Daniel noted that he met Kyle on the way, and he offered to have a friendly duel with him. Olivia asked who won, and Daniel said that, of course, it was him. The lady asked me to remind him because he was only 17. Daniel noted that this was indeed the case. His birthday was coming soon. Olivia asked when he had grown so much Daniel himself didn't know. Olivia was in very poor physical shape, and it took a lot of work to fix it. And when everything was starting to get better, she finally met the master. Finally, he has appeared. His name is Giorgio Esther. Giorgio received the news of Olivia's illness and felt relieved to learn that she had recovered. This brought him joy, as his worry for her had disappeared. Giorgio was a close friend and relative of Prince Leonardo, playing a minor role in the story. Despite this, his actions were quite significant. Giorgio was kind and caring, accompanying Olivia until the very end. His support was important to her, even though his role seemed small. However, despite his outward behavior in Olivia's eyes, Giorgio has become the one who will destroy the Versace family, and it is his actions that will lead to her death. He will be the one to carry out the sentence and execute Olivia, despite all his displays of kindness and support, which will be a terrible omen for her. Giorgio was extremely surprised to learn that Olivia was skilled in fencing. This discovery made him look at her with new respect and wonder. Olivia was slightly indignant at his surprise, believing that her obvious fencing skills should have been obvious to anyone who knew her even slightly. He noticed that she was silent and felt uneasy, thinking that he might have upset her with his visit. His words about her silence only increased the tension. Realizing that he finally understood what had happened, Giorgio began to apologize. He thought that maybe he should leave so as not to disturb Olivia. He just wanted to know how she was feeling, concerned about her health. However, his concern could also be perceived as interference. Giorgio wondered if he would have acted the same way if he had met his killer. He felt uneasy, not knowing how to act in this situation. Olivia, sensing his inappropriate behavior, said that since he had shown himself to be ignorant, she asked him to leave and not waste her time. She had just finished training and didn't want to waste her energy talking to him, deciding that it was important for her to focus on other things. Olivia realized that her family, the Versaces, were highly respected among the northern nobility. If someone threatened her authority, she was prepared to defend herself. Despite her best efforts to appear virtuous, her villainous nature began to emerge, and she decided to act decisively to maintain her status. Olivia had thrown down the gauntlet, declaring that she would show him no mercy, and was prepared to strike rather than simply turn the other cheek. It was a challenge that could not be ignored. Giorgio picked up the glove and noticed that she had dropped it. This surprised him, and he realized that there was more to her actions than just that. Olivia explained that she did not drop the glove by accident, but did it on purpose to demonstrate her determination and strength in that moment. Giorgio thought she was challenging him to a duel, but Olivia only asked what he was going to do next, leaving room for his reaction. The man was confused and did not understand what she meant by this. However, Olivia stated that he was in her way, hinting at the need for action on his part. Giorgio apologized for blocking her path, and his assistant, frightened by her determination, admitted that he was afraid of her, considering her a terrible woman. Giorgio stepped back and said that he would now follow Olivia, giving her the opportunity to go first so as not to hinder her movement forward. Olivia was taken aback by Giorgio's changed behavior, seeing his face become gloomy. She felt that he had become more dangerous now, like a villain. After she passed, the guy wished her luck, hoping that everything would work out, and they would both be able to move forward with their respective endeavors. A few days later, Olivia knocked on her father's door to tell him the important news. The delegation had finally arrived as she had expected. When Olivia walked in, her eyes instantly caught sight of the familiar silver hair, which left her in shock. This was the person she hadn't expected to see. Giorgio, who met the lady, was sincerely glad. He introduced himself again and explained that he would now represent His Majesty, ready for an important meeting. Olivia also introduced herself, stating that she was very pleased to meet him and that she was glad to meet such a person despite their previous meetings. Although they had met before, she understood that in front of her father, she would have to play the role of a first acquaintance, as if they had not met before. The gentleman suggested that the Count discuss this important topic with the whole family, since it affects everyone's interests. He suggested discussing everything together at one table. Olivia, agreeing, admitted that it was a wonderful idea, and so her father suggested that she sit down so that everyone could calmly discuss the pressing issues. The lady turned to Giorgio, saying that their family had already responded to His Majesty's request in writing. This response was important, and they were ready for further discussion. The answer certainly satisfied him, but still, in connection with some new circumstances, this question was worth raising again to discuss all the details. Giorgio expressed confidence that since she had already recovered, it was time to return to the question of her moving to the Imperial Palace, which would be an important step for the family. In Olivia's eyes, he appeared to be a devious man who sought to weaken the Versace family by leaving it without a key member, which caused her displeasure. She explained that, although she still felt a little sick, she had fought quite well with a sword a couple of days ago, and this clearly did not justify her conditions. Olivia, a little irritated, replied that her illness still persisted, but Giorgio clearly did not want to listen to her words and continued to insist on his own. Giorgio tried to understand her, saying that the proposal she had been given was a dream come true for any lady. He could not understand why she refused. Olivia firmly replied that she had her own reasons for refusing. She was attracted to other men and did not agree to the proposed option. The Count noticed that his daughter had a very unusual taste and added that this was not worth worrying about, since in general her preferences were always unique. He assured her that there was no need to worry about it. The Crown Prince was famous for his beauty, but he was not suitable for him personally. Giorgio was sure that she would fall in love with him at first sight. Giorgio continued to say that the prince looked even more handsome in person and that his fencing skills were superior to many. He was sure that she would feel it immediately. Olivia, already irritated, thought that Giorgio, if he was so confident in the prince, should marry him himself. The girl continued to claim that this prince did not suit her taste, but the gentleman insisted that she would definitely regret her decision. Olivia began to say that if she went to the palace, the regret would be even greater. So her father intervened and said that there was nothing more to discuss with the Marquis. The Versace family has served the kingdom with loyalty and courage for many years, earning trust and respect, for which they have been given important privileges. The father asked to show respect for such a family. Giorgio began to say that the lady saw that she had recovered, and added that her age did not correspond to what was in the letter. Olivia replied that her appearance should not be misleading. She was still sick despite the improvement in her condition. If the courtiers found out that she had rejected the crown prince simply because of his appearance, everyone would think it was a mistake, since he had failed to introduce himself properly. Giorgio noted that she was quite cunning, and Olivia added that when a person is ill, his feelings become more acute and sensitive. As soon as the conversation came to an end, Olivia decided to leave their company, considering that there was nothing more to discuss. But the gentleman asked her to wait a little longer, and Olivia stopped wondering what he wanted from her next. Giorgio asked if she would see him off, awaiting her answer, with some excitement, hoping for her participation. Olivia replied that she was unlikely to see him off, as she felt ill and needed rest and peace. A month had passed since Giorgio Esther's visit. The weather was magnificent. Bright sun and light winds created an atmosphere that brought autumn comfort closer. Daisy approached the lady, reminding her that it was already time for lunch. But the lady was still sitting lost in thought, not noticing how time had flown by. Daisy also reported that a letter had arrived for her, without specifying who it was from, and noticing this with mild interest. The lady could not understand who could have sent her the letter, and taking it in her hands in surprise, a slight look of bewilderment appeared on her face. The letter was from Giorgio, who informed her that the cold autumn winds had arrived and winter was coming, warning her of the coming cold snap. He asked her to dress warmly and not go outside until she was fully recovered, worrying about her health and hoping for her visit to the palace. He was worried about her condition, and despite the distance, asked her to take measures to avoid catching a cold, completely assuring her that he was writing with love. Daisy, in her delight, asked if this was the same letter from the Marquis, who had visited them earlier, adding that he was very caring. She noticed that there were many illnesses in the autumn, and she believed that the lady would certainly fall ill again, hoping for a quick answer to Giorgio's letter. Olivia was sure that Giorgio was just trying to anger her. Daisy, in turn, wondered if he really had fallen in love with the lady. Olivia was shocked by this assumption, believing that Daisy was wrong, and declared that he was just an idiot who did not deserve her attention. Giorgio played a decisive role in developing the relationship between the main characters of the novel. Daisy thought that the lady was going to answer him. Olivia didn't really want to answer, but she knew she would probably have to, since Giorgio wouldn't leave her alone anyway. So she wrote to him that because of his actions, she had caught a cold and was sick again, finding only him to blame for this. She added to the letter a request not to write to her anymore, as she could not stand such messages and was already tired of them. She also included in the letter that she hates receiving letters and hopes that this will be the last time. Giorgio continued to write her letters full of sarcasm and irony, despite her refusal and cold attitude not giving up in his efforts. Sometimes she did answer him, but only out of pity, sending short and neutral replies to stop his persistent attempts. Soon the maids began to spread rumors, and even fan fiction began to be written about their relationship, surprised by the intensity of their correspondence. Giorgio bumped into Olivia in the hallway, and he immediately realized that he had fallen in love with her at first sight, despite all the obstacles that separated them. He even tried to ask the Count for her hand, but he refused, not ready to allow him to be with Olivia despite his feelings. Although they were separated by entire provinces, Giorgio continued to write her letters, in which he expressed his love and desire to be with her. He wrote that he reread all her past letters, even when she did not answer him, feeling that his heart belonged only to her. Giorgio also wrote that he began to seriously engage in fencing, because a real man should be able to handle a sword, hoping that this would impress her. Since there was still no response from her, he thought that she was still ill or had too much to do to answer his letters. Olivia was sure that it was time to get rid of all this correspondence and free herself from it, considering the letters useless trash. Her brother asked her what she would do with the letters, perhaps burn them. Olivia was indifferent and said that she now understood why Giorgio had no lady. Kyle noticed that the reason for her lack of suitors was the same as his. However, the lady assured that she had admirers. Moreover, there was more than one. The gentleman was simply not aware of their existence. Kyle, finding this strange, hastened to find out the truth from his sister, but she only shrugged her shoulders and assured him that she was no less surprised by the lady's words. After a short dialogue, the lady decisively sent her brother away, noting that he had better mind his own business. She added that they needed to talk to Daisy. The lady said that she had already discussed everything with Daisy and revealed all the details to her. Now she didn't care at all about his feelings and behavior. However, the maid sincerely did not understand why the mistress hid the letters that came from this man for so long. Olivia sighed and stated that they had completely misunderstood the situation, and there had never been anything serious between her and this man. However, Daisy was sure that he was truly in love. The maid's words only angered Olivia. She quickly objected, saying that this man's feelings were complete nonsense. Even if he was in love, it meant nothing, because she was indifferent to him. Daisy, after listening to her, carefully asked if Olivia was hurt by this man's confessions, and if they caused her discomfort. Olivia couldn't help but admit that the man's words had hurt her deeply. Moreover, she was furious with his confessions and everything connected with it. Olivia added that her heart was not indifferent to Daniel. It was her unexpected revelation that left the maid stumped. The lady's words confused Daisy. She thought Daniel was a rude and irresponsible man, but Olivia only smirked and noted that, as they say, the heart cannot be commanded. The maid's reaction was quite expected, because Daniel was her brother. However, the mistress decided to return the conversation to the right track and discuss important matters. She recalled that Daisy had mentioned boyfriends and expressed curiosity about which of them held a special place in her heart. Daisy, embarrassed by the direct question, cautiously admitted that she did like someone, but she preferred not to name this person. However, Olivia immediately guessed that this sympathy was unrequited love, which she said. Meanwhile, at the Smackhole Academy, the manager and crown prince Leonardo was trying to calm down his cousin Giorgio, who was laughing loudly, interfering with his reading. Leonardo asked Giorgio irritably why he was making so much noise when he could be doing something more useful instead of distracting everyone. He complained that he was trying to concentrate on a book while Giorgio was doing something incomprehensible and disturbing the peace. Leonardo noticed a strange woman's glove on his cousin and asked where he got it from and who it belonged to. Giorgio smiled and admitted that the glove belonged to the lady who had managed to win his heart. Leonardo was skeptical that Giorgio had changed since returning from Hershey. He suggested calling a doctor to figure out what was going on. Giorgio, laughing, replied that there was no need to worry, since this lady was not his type anyway. Leonardo advised him to leave him alone and find another victim for his stories. Olivia decided to have a frank conversation and asked how he would react if someone confessed their feelings to him. Daniel responded that his reaction would depend entirely on who exactly made such a confession. Olivia clarified that if the feelings were not mutual, what would he do then? Daniel admitted that he would feel awkward, and Olivia agreed, adding that it was a very difficult situation. She joked that Daniel had probably broken more than one woman's heart with his indifference. Daniel admitted that it is even more difficult for those who confessed their feelings and were not reciprocated. The pain of unrequited love is severe. Olivia thoughtfully noted that if you loved someone who didn't care, it might be better not to even confess your feelings to them. After these words, she herself wondered why she had started this conversation at all, and what it could lead to. Daniel agreed that sometimes it was better to keep your feelings to yourself to avoid unnecessary suffering on both sides. He added that if he were in his place, that's exactly what he would do. In the novel, it turns out Daniel never got around to confessing his love to Olivia. Despite their closeness, he continued to call her mistress, remembering her count's title. All this made Olivia incredibly sad. She thought about how hard it was to keep her feelings under control. However, she decided not to put it off any longer. Putting her doubts aside, she decided to act no matter how difficult it might be. Olivia remembered that, once as a child, she confessed her feelings to Daniel. This confession, in her opinion, must have made him feel awkward and embarrassed. Daniel noticed that this was something completely different, and despite his surprise, he tried not to focus on it. Olivia asked him again if he really thought it was a completely different case to understand his feelings. It seemed to her that he considered himself unworthy of her, that it was incredibly difficult for him. All these thoughts led Olivia to the sad realization that she might be facing rejection again. Kyle noticed that Daisy was claiming that she had found herself a boyfriend and asked Daniel if he thought it was true. Daniel wasn't surprised and noted that guys were chasing Daisy in droves, so it was quite possible. Kyle was taken aback and asked if he was serious about it, but Daniel didn't have time for Daisy at the moment. He was much more worried about Olivia because she hadn't changed since their last conversation, and this worried him greatly. He began to think that perhaps Olivia was hinting to him that her feelings for him had finally faded and would never return. The thought crossed his mind that perhaps Olivia had fallen in love with the Marquise, and this became another cause for concern for him. At this time, at the Meridian family estate, Daisy was carefully monitoring the condition of the flowers in the garden, taking care of them as usual. She noticed that her brother arrived earlier than expected, and noted that he arrived too early, which surprised her. Daisy advised him to change his clothes as quickly as possible because dinner would soon be ready, and she was going to set the table. Daniel a little nervously said that he had a question for Daisy, to which she asked surprised what exactly he wanted to talk about. He asked her if she knew whether the Marquise continued to send Olivia his letters, since he was interested in this. Daisy confirmed that the Marquis still sends letters to Olivia, noting that he is quite caring and attentive. Daniel disagreed with her opinion, finding the Marquis annoying and arrogant, despite his thin build. He was not her type. Daisy noted with a smile that he spoke exactly like Kyle, adding that there was nothing tactful in the Marquis's letters. However, she countered that the Marquis was very talented in letters revealing his feelings and heart to Olivia. Daniel could not understand what was so special about that. The maid reported that Olivia sometimes answered letters, and it seemed that the Marquis was not indifferent to hers. Hearing this, Daniel was very upset, and his mood worsened sharply. He felt that this was not a good sign. Daisy also said that she only showed one of her projects because she was too shy to show the others. Her shyness prevented her from revealing everything she had done. Olivia felt that she was already an adult. Her experiences had become deeper. This was not just a simple childish hobby. She realized the seriousness of her feelings. Olivia couldn't understand why she hadn't known about this before. The feelings that were now clear to her had seemed new and surprising to her before. She couldn't get the answers she needed through interrogation. It was necessary to find another way that could reveal the whole truth to her. Daniel said that there is no pain stronger than unrequited love, and now Olivia must understand who caused her suffering. Olivia couldn't understand how to get the maid to tell her about the man who was so important to her and why she refused to talk about it. The novella probably mentioned this moment. You just had to concentrate and try to remember the important details. After a while, Olivia realized that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember what happened in Daisy's life in the novel. Everything seemed to disappear from her memory. Events that did not concern her simply flew out of her head, leaving no trace, as if they had never existed at all. But as for herself and all the events connected with her, Olivia remembered clearly, as if it were all recorded in her memory. In the novel, her character was negative. She was the one who interfered with the main character and created problems. A stupid and helpless puppet that was used by the main villain to carry out his plans and spite the prince. All this happened in order to annoy the prince. It was the villain who pushed her to act against the main character. Olivia was kidnapped, and she thought it was all over, that her life ended at that moment. But at the very last moment, the main character appeared and saved her, changing her fate. Thus was sown the seed of love that became the basis for her participation in history, despite her secondary role. Olivia was just a minor villain she suffered, but her role in the story was limited. It's no surprise that her storyline didn't last long, and her involvement was very minor. Daisy was talking to her mistress, but suddenly became silent, which aroused Olivia's interest, who decided to find out what her maid was thinking about. Olivia said it didn't matter, although what she was really thinking was that in the novel, her character barely spoke to the maid. Now it became clear why Olivia didn't remember anything about Daisy. They were just episodic characters in someone else's story. They were just episodes in the story. The villains and heroes were much more significant figures for the entire novel. Olivia didn't even know that Daisy was so good at embroidery. It was a surprise to her. The maid noticed that she had some work to do and said that even the rabbits she had embroidered turned out cute. Olivia corrected her, saying that they should be roses, not rabbits, as she thought. The maid remarked that Olivia probably did enjoy embroidery, although not as much as she did. They say that if a woman gives a man a handkerchief, it will be a symbol of her recognition and feelings. However, the scarf that Olivia embroidered was so unsuccessful that she decided to give it to her father or brother and not to anyone else. Olivia asked who Daisy was planning to give the handkerchief, to assuming that she was embroidering it for a gentleman. Daisy began to explain that of course it was not for a gentleman, but simply because she wanted to give a gift. She even said that she wouldn't be surprised if it turned out that she was the best seamstress on the entire server, and that she embroidered her scarf for her brother and father. Although she doubted that they would appreciate such a gift, because it was not made exactly as a gift for a man's. Olivia assumed that her beau was a knight, which scared Daisy a lot because she didn't want anyone to guess. Olivia said that she embroidered a shield with an eagle, which is the symbol of the Red Knights, which surprised Daisy even more. Daisy quickly corrected her, clarifying that it was simply a talisman that she wanted to give to her brother. Olivia was sure that this symbol belonged to the Red Knights, but decided that she would not give it to Daniel. Olivia increasingly doubted that she had assessed the situation correctly and did not know what to do in the future if everything changed. She certainly had no intention of giving Daniel her handkerchief, considering it a gift far inferior to what she could have offered. Olivia knew she was nowhere near Daisy's level of skill. She could never be that skilled. Olivia was back to her training, carefully refining every element. She spared no effort in striving for perfection in her skills. Her father and brother watched her actions. Her father thought that perhaps it was too early for such loads and intensive training. Kyle, however, had a different opinion, believing that it was high time for Olivia to start preparing, as she would soon be joining the academy. He believed that this was the moment to test whether she was truly worthy of this step. Olivia continued practicing with the dummies, with great skill, when her brother approached her. He was quite impressed with her skills. Kyle praised her and gently patted her on the shoulder, noting that she was really doing well. He drew his sword and said that she still had much to learn and that he would not hold back his strength today. Olivia realized that her brother was now serious and that this time it would not be easy for him. Kyle immediately rushed to attack, but Olivia managed to block his blow, showing her readiness for a serious fight. The father was very scared when he saw them fighting and asked Kyle to be careful and not get carried away with force. Olivia, however, understood perfectly well that her brother was not holding back his power and was hitting for real, sparing no effort. At that moment, she decided to show her brother what she was capable of, and she was very determined, ready for a tough fight. The brother was even a little scared when he saw how quickly she dodged and rushed past him. Olivia was already behind her brother, and taking advantage of the moment, knocked the sword out of his hands. She was pleased with her victory. However, at that moment, she noticed that something was wrong with her sword. A strange red aura began to emanate from it. Olivia was confused, not understanding what was happening and why this aura was appearing now. At that moment, she remembered that she had gone down into the dungeon with her father and brother. But why remained a mystery. Her father handed her a small chest and said that inside there was something important intended especially for her. Inside was an antique ring that my father said had been passed down in their family for generations as part of the family heritage. He asked her to put on the ring immediately, explaining that it played an important role in her destiny. Olivia wasn't quite sure what the object was, but when the ring began to glow, her confusion only grew. Kyle explained that the ring was a weapon with magical powers, and that it had chosen her as its bearer. Olivia still didn't understand, how she was supposed to use this ring to make it her weapon in battle. Her father explained that by putting her energy into the ring, she would be able to transform it into a weapon which would give her strength. Now she began to realize that this ring could really help her in the future, perhaps in the most difficult situations. Her father asked her to come and try to direct her energy into the eagle symbol on the ring to test its power. Olivia wondered why she had to do this. She believed that only the head of the family deserved such an honor. But her father explained that their family was special, that magical power flowed in their blood, which meant that this secret was passed on to her. It was a Versace family tradition to pass on the legacy through generations. Olivia couldn't understand why she had been chosen, but perhaps she would soon get an answer when the ring began to react to her energy. At that moment, everything began to glow. Olivia was shocked to see that the Versace family book contained knowledge that would be passed on to her descendants. The book told the story of how the war began 12 years ago, and how Emperor Kamahil IV took the throne of Deucalion. The emperor divided the empire into 4 provinces: Sabinus in the east, Cretiane in the west, the independent lands in the south, and Versace in the north. In those years, the patrician Versace, the red-feathered eagle who led the troops, gained fame. She chose the red eagle as her symbol, and with this banner, she led her troops to the front, winning victories. However, after the end of the war, the nobility turned away from her, not recognizing a woman in the role of a military leader. The Imperial family also looked with suspicion on the Versace family, and only other members of the family were called to the capital. They tried to get closer to the aristocracy, but the patrician remained in her county, refusing offers from the capital. Later, she got married, but her happiness was short-lived, and the capital's Versaces became victims of betrayal. Patricia returned north and revived the Order of the Red Eagle, seeking to restore its lost strength. It was only 2 years later that the emperor acknowledged her services, giving her credit for her loyalty and wisdom in restoring order. Noble families could only marry those of equal status, and despite her merits, the patrician remained in the status of a concubine. The red-feathered eagle attracted the attention of the emperor, but he did not agree to marry her. Patricia took her place next to the emperor, becoming his concubine, and this caused a deep shock to Olivia. She could not understand why such unfair treatment was shown to her ancestress. Olivia suddenly couldn't stand it, and started screaming that the emperor was a real bastard. She recalled how the patrician had dedicated her entire life to serving the empire, and he had humiliated her by making her a mere concubine, not recognizing her merits and virtues. Olivia's anger knew no bounds, and she declared that the emperor was a real freak. Her indignation and resentment for the patrician grew with each passing minute. She literally seethed with rage. Kyle noted that such people were common in the capital. However, his father added that there were exceptions, mentioning that his mother, Cecilia, would never do such a thing. He emphasized that Cecilia, known as the true beauty of the Argon family, was far from being like the others. Her dignity and principles stood apart from the capital's elite. Cecilia bore a double surname, Argon de Callan, and the patrician was the last remaining representative of the Argon line. Kyle agreed that despite this, the emperor was an extremely vile person. Kyle suddenly noticed that it turned out that imperial blood also flowed in their veins. For Olivia, this was a shocking discovery, and Kyle himself, it seems, did not know it. Her father told Olivia to continue reading, but the girl categorically refused, claiming that the more she read, the angrier she became. This did not improve her mood at all. Kyle chuckled and teased her that he was just shocked by her. He implied that she was actually very interested in what would happen next, which only made her more annoyed. The text mentioned that Patricia Kamahila had first requested the title of border guard, an important position that symbolized her commitment to protecting the empire. She also expressed a desire to be given the right to carry the imperial banner and to take a blood oath, which would strengthen her ties to the imperial crown and confirm her loyalty. Although the Versaces retained the title of count, their position as guardians of the borders allowed the family to enjoy respect and status comparable to that of marquises. Since then, the Versace family has become a symbol of the protection of the empire, and the imperial family always fulfilling its mission even in the most difficult times. The right to carry the imperial banner gave the Versace family the opportunity to station their troops in the capital to protect the emperor in case of military conflicts or uprisings. The blood oath prohibited family members from marrying members of the imperial dynasty. Surprisingly, even centuries later, the text of the decree was preserved in the archive. Olivia thought about it and noticed that such gifts, if you think about it, looked more like burdensome duties than privileges, and only increased dependence on the crown. Her father confirmed her words, explaining that this was a clever move by the emperor. He granted visible rights, but in this way, he protected himself, strengthening his power and protection. On the other hand, the current situation made the Versace family virtually untouchable. Their status became so significant that any attempts to influence them seemed impossible. Olivia believed that their position implied something more. In her opinion, the Versace family was obliged not only to maintain their authority, but also to protect the emperor at all costs. This is true. The Versace family had such a level of trust that they could bring their troops into the capital at any time. The Imperial family considered them reliable allies, which made this connection even stronger. Patricia, in turn, showed herself to be extremely sensible. Thanks to her decision, she actually achieved that the Imperial family took patronage over Versace. It was a stroke of genius. Olivia's father thought it was important for his daughter to carefully study the last lines of the document. He emphasized that this point plays a key role and can influence further actions. The document stated that the Versace family was obliged to protect the imperial family even if it meant questioning its power. The responsibility was enormous. At this time, Leonardo was busy with his own affairs. He was suddenly interrupted by Giorgio, who entered the room. He looked strange, and Leonardo immediately felt that something had happened. Giorgio looked worried. Leonardo thought that perhaps another letter had arrived, and that was the reason for his concern. The crown prince was already irritated, but Giorgio began to explain. It turned out that the girl had written again about her illness, after which there had been no more lines from her. Giorgio admitted that he did not know what to do. He thought that the girl could be seriously ill, perhaps even on the verge of death, since she was not responding. Leonardo just sighed. He considered the empire lucky that he was the heir, and not Giorgio, who was too emotional for such a responsibility. However, he suggested that his cousin think about the situation on his own. Leonardo believed that Giorgio needed to look at things objectively. Leonardo pointed out that he was writing long letters to the girl and only receiving a few lines in response. This seemed strange and spoke of her indifference. To clarify the situation, he asked how many letters Giorgio had already sent. Giorgio counted and reported that he had sent 2 or 3 letters. The girl responded with only a brief message about her illness, after which she fell silent. Leonardo was amazed that Giorgio remembered her words word for word. He noted that his cousin had a good memory, but emphasized that if she had been really interested, she would have answered. Leonardo tried to convince Giorgio that after 3 letters and no answer, he had to admit the obvious. The girl didn't care. He needed to realize that. Giorgio disagreed. He claimed that Leonardo did not know the girl. In his opinion, her silence did not mean indifference. He insisted that a few lines were enough for love. The crown prince thought that Giorgio had completely lost his head over this girl. But Leonardo could not accept such arguments. It seemed to him that this was an obvious manifestation of a careless attitude, and Giorgio was simply deceiving himself. However, Giorgio had a different opinion. He believed that even a couple of phrases could show concern. This was the peculiarity of her for which he loved her. Leonardo realized that Giorgio was truly in love. His feelings were sincere, although Leonardo believed that this romance was doomed. Giorgio began to talk about how he couldn't take his eyes off Olivia, because she was the epitome of perfection. His gaze was captivated by her grace, beauty, and confidence. Leonardo, not hiding his anger, declared that he forbade Giorgio to appear in the palace. He was ordered to leave the place immediately and never return. Kyle looked at the girl carefully and wondered if she understood where this was really going. His question was full of doubt and hidden anxiety. Olivia assumed Kyle was referring to their incredible luck. However, deep down, she knew that the situation was far from happy. The girl thought that the north was much safer than the capital, but her thoughts instantly switched to something else. Now is not the time to think about places. Kyle was annoyed that Olivia couldn't figure out who her grandmother looked like. Her ignorance seemed almost offensive to him, but he kept his emotions in check. The father asked Kyle not to put pressure on the girl. Instead, he suggested giving Olivia time to think things over and come to the right conclusions. Suddenly, Olivia realized that the patrician was incredibly similar to her. This thought was an epiphany that her father immediately picked up on, noting their similarities. They were indeed of the same blood, their features and mannerisms were almost identical. Unlike the others, this thought was important for realizing the truth. Patricia Versace. Olivia found herself thinking that that woman would have made a great leading lady, so charismatic and strong. Olivia couldn't understand why she was the one in this story. The fate that was destined for her seemed too tragic and unfair. She also had no idea how many secrets her family was hiding. These details were not mentioned in the original story, which made everything even more mysterious. The details of her backstory felt odd. It was an unexpected narrative point that added depth, but also raised questions. All the events around seemed isolated, as if they had been filmed on a carefully guarded set, hidden from prying eyes. Everything outside the visible picture seemed not to exist. What was not in frame lost its significance and seemed to dissolve into emptiness. Outside the lens, the world seemed non-existent. This strange sensation added absurdity to what was happening, forcing one to think about the nature of reality. Now, however, everything seemed real. Even the ring on her hand no longer seemed like a fantasy, but a very real object. The ring was most likely intended for the protagonist, but Olivia couldn't remember it being mentioned in the original story. Usually, when someone ends up in a novel, an entity appears that explains what is happening, but no one met it, and it seemed strange. Perhaps this entity did appear to her in a dream, but the girl simply did not remember it. Her memory could fail her at the most important moment. Despite everything, Olivia didn't care. She decided to live her life the way she wanted. She wasn't afraid of the predestinations, and she intended to change her destiny. She dreamed of a luxurious house with a green garden. Her future no longer included caring for her brother, whom she considered unreasonable and stubborn. Olivia planned to find a handsome man and build happiness. Meanwhile, her father sat with Kyle and wondered if they were doing the right thing. Olivia is about to leave for the academy, and her father, despite his outward calm, understands that this place is fraught with many dangers. He worries about his daughter. 3 months passed. Autumn came, and the leaves began to fall. Olivia stood by the window, looking thoughtfully into the distance. Her thoughts were far from this picture. Without taking her eyes off the window, Olivia turned to Oscar and calmly said that she had an important matter that required his attention. Oscar, busy with his own affairs, looked at her and clarified that he was a little busy. However, the lady unexpectedly suggested to imagine that she confessed her feelings to him and asked his reaction. Oscar was startled by the unexpectedness, and thoughts began to swarm in his head about what he could have done wrong to deserve such a strange turn of conversation. Olivia was taken aback by his reaction. Did she really look that stern? Despite her doubts, she asked if he would refuse her in a similar situation. Oscar smiled and remarked that he hoped the lady didn't think that Daniel had gone to the border because he didn't like her. Olivia couldn't help but chuckle mentally, noting that Oscar was more perceptive than she had expected. However, she understood that it was better to have such conversations personally with Daniel, because he was a person of a completely different nature than Oscar. Later, Olivia approached Oscar again. She proposed the idea of opening another branch of the company in Demir to expand the business. She continued to develop the idea to build a new plant and open 3 retail outlets in the east, or better yet 5, to cover a larger territory. Oscar chuckled and stated directly that the lady was simply taking it out on him, not satisfied with his answer to her previous question. Olivia categorically denied his assumption and assured him that his answer was quite appropriate. However, if he thought so, he could propose to her. The lady added with a grin that they could open a branch in the west. Oscar joked that she was worrying in vain. Daniel definitely liked her. This was true, but Olivia knew that for the past 3 months, Daniel had been avoiding her as if they barely knew each other. The conversation at the lake changed a lot. Daniel then said that it was not worth confessing his feelings. It would only complicate their relationship. After that, Olivia focused entirely on training and tried to distance herself from him to drown out her feelings. Daniel couldn't go with her to the academy, so he decided to go to the border to join the Land Guard. He spent all this time away from her, and for months, he did not write her a single line, as if he was trying to forget. Before they couldn't spend a day without each other, but now they seemed almost like strangers. These changes were hard to comprehend, but the fact remained. Their connection seemed to have been destroyed. Oscar did not understand why the lady did not make the first move and write to Daniel herself. Olivia, a little annoyed, said she was busy. Oscar was so surprised by this answer that he froze in place. Olivia glanced at Oscar and said sharply that she was tired of his staring. She asked him to leave, not wanting to continue the conversation. At the Versace estate, preparations were in full swing for an important event. The crown had ordered troops to be sent to protect the borders from threats. The family allocated 5 regiments. 2 were sent directly to the border and 3 to the dangerous dark forest. Olivia's father and brother made the decision to personally accompany the troops, demonstrating courage and dedication to their duty. Daniel, who could not abandon his obligations, went with them. Olivia's heart was beating so hard, it felt like it was going to jump out of her chest. She wished her father good luck, hiding her excitement behind a mask of calm. Her father hugged her goodbye with gratitude, and Kyle noticed the handkerchief in her hands, deciding that it was meant for him. However, upon closer inspection, he saw an embroidered chicken and doubted his guesses. Olivia shouted loudly that if he didn't like the gift, he didn't have to take it. But Kyle replied that gifts were not returned. Daisy in turn said goodbye to her brother and handed him her handkerchief as a talisman. Then Olivia came up, looking confident and composed, despite her nervousness. Daniel looked at her and asked how she was feeling, expecting a short answer. Olivia as always replied that she was fine. She wished him luck on his hike. Daniel, a little embarrassed, asked for forgiveness for everything that happened between them. However, without waiting for an answer, he jumped on his horse and quickly rode away, as if avoiding further conversation. Meanwhile, chaos reigned in Crown Prince Leonardo's office. There was so much work that he did not know where to start. The servant offered him some tea to take his mind off things and relax a bit. But the prince, waving his hand, ordered tea to be brought for Gerald, who looked completely exhausted. He was also informed that the Marquise had arrived. Leonardo prepared for the meeting. Giorgio literally flew into the office, beaming with joy. The prince was puzzled why he was embarrassed every time he saw him smile. He had a strange feeling that Giorgio was deliberately creating this tension. However, he was forced to accept the guest. Giorgio happily reported that he had received a reply letter from his beloved, which aroused genuine interest in the prince. In the letter, Olivia said that she had written before and added that she hated texting. She explained that she preferred not to communicate through letters, which made them tiring for her. Leonardo was completely confused. He could not understand if this was really all she had written to him, and he continued to wonder if he had missed something important in her words. Giorgio noticed that he was always afraid that she didn't like him, but he realized that Olivia just didn't like writing. Her handwriting looked somehow illegible and didn't make much sense. It was extremely difficult to decipher her handwriting. However, she was a countess, and even her sloppy notes were important because she belonged to high society. Leonardo turned to his friend, but noticing his doubts, suggested that he might introduce him to another lady if Olivia did not interest him as much as he had hoped. Giorgio firmly replied that she was simply tired and that she shouldn't take her words so seriously. He believed that there was no need to pay attention to all this, especially not to dramatize it. Leonardo was surprised and asked if he really thought he was delirious. After all, he was in love with a girl who clearly did not feel the same way about him, and he could not ignore it. He suggested that Leonardo meet someone else, but the Marquis replied that he had no need for that at all. He was not going to waste time on acquaintances if his heart was given only to Olivia. Giorgio was handsome, sweet and elegant, the epitome of high manners and refined taste. This made him attractive to others, despite his concern for Olivia's feelings. Leonardo noticed that Giorgio made quite the opposite impression. His manners and appearance did not at all evoke the emotions he expected when it came to such an important issue. Giorgio got angry and started to complain, claiming that he and Olivia were in love, and he didn't understand why Leonardo couldn't see it. He was sure of his feelings and didn't want to hide it. Olivia asked if anyone around her had been offended. She also asked if the field doctor had enough supplies for the army, and if not, they should send a wagon to get them to solve the problem. The girl also asked her maid if she had packed everything she needed for the cold times. Daisy informed her that everything had already been sent and there should have been no delays. Hard times were coming, and the girl reminded that there was no point in sparing savings if they could be spent on more important goals. At such times, saving was unwise, especially in conditions of uncertainty. Olivia asked Sir Haman to send the artifact makers 20 monster trophies that were in their warehouse. She wanted them to be made into magical talismans that would help in the fight against future threats. Oscar was outraged by her decision, believing that creating simple amulets from such trophies was simply stupid. He was sure that these trophies could be sold for a lot of money and significantly improve the financial situation. He believed that these trophies were of great value and could be sold. He was sure that even in a month, it would be possible to provide for the entire estate if these items were properly managed. But the lady replied that the frost was coming, and she thought they should be saved for more important purposes. The season had been harsh, and she did not want to risk wasting the spoils on something that would not bring immediate benefit. The winter was going to be very harsh, and she insisted that everyone take her decision seriously. The girl was prepared for hard times and chose to be cautious rather than spend resources carelessly. Oscar said that it would be better to teach the maid how to manage things. He considered that spending precious trophies on amulets was strange and unjustified. Daisy replied with a smile that her mistress knew best how to manage the funds. She had no doubts about her decision and believed that her choice was the best in the situation, despite Oscar's opinion. Oscar, still dissatisfied, said he would have found better uses for the trophies himself. He would have been more practical hired workers to use them for more useful purposes, not to create talismans. He also asked Daisy if she had spoken to the lady about the matter. He was sure that the topic required a more serious approach than simply agreeing with her decisions. The gentleman remarked that it would be better to tell Olivia right now, before she became too engrossed in her work. He thought it would be worthwhile to raise the matter before she became too busy with other matters. Olivia replied that she simply didn't want to be a bother. She didn't feel the need to repeat her requests and thoughts. Oscar said that she was just making excuses, because Daisy knew very well how much her mistress cared for her. She did not need reminders, and all her actions were dictated by concern for their future. The dark forest was engulfed in a brutal struggle. The Imperial troops spent 2 weeks freeing it from the monsters that ruled this area. Every morning they prepared for new battles. The warrior spirit united the soldiers, uniting them with a common goal. All attention was focused on victory, and this gave each fighter the determination and strength to move forward despite fatigue. Daniel did not hesitate to join the 3rd Night Battalion. It was an important step for him, and he knew that this choice would change many things in his life. The battalion was known for its fighting strength. This battalion was in the vanguard. The most determined and experienced fighters fought in its ranks. Kyle, the commander, thought that Daniel needed to rest because the boy hardly slept. Kyle was worried about his health, but Daniel insisted that he was sleeping well and didn't need any rest. He was determined and ready to continue fighting Kyle. Though he disagreed with his opinion, understood that there was something more behind his determination. Kyle reminded Daniel that he should take care of himself because Olivia was very worried about him. Kyle was sure that the girl was not indifferent to his fate. This concern made him more attentive. Lately, Daniel and Olivia's relationship had become more distant. It was noticeable on her part, and she probably gave her handkerchief to the Marquis to somehow keep his spirits up. Suddenly, Kyle asked Daniel if he knew who had stolen his scarf. This took Daniel by surprise, and he immediately began asking questions, trying to figure out if his sister had really made the scarf. Kyle noted that maybe the handkerchief wasn't that important, but he could still return it to Daniel. He admitted that it wasn't the most fancy of handkerchiefs, but it was still meaningful and could be used as a talisman. "It's got a beak, wings, and a look like Olivia's," Kyle said, noting that the scarf was unusual. Daniel, hearing this, realized that this was not just a thing, but a symbol, something important for his future. At that moment, Daniel realized that the scarf had an eagle on it. This symbol became an important moment of realization for him, and he felt that a certain responsibility was being placed on him. Michael advised Daniel not to stain the handkerchief with blood in battle and to remember the importance of keeping it safe. He also reminded him to always tuck it under his sleeve so as not to lose it or damage it. Daniel smiled. It was the first time he wore the charm Olivia had made. In that moment, he felt connected to her, and that feeling gave him strength. Kyle reiterated that Daniel had to take care of himself, or Olivia would be very worried. He said that if he couldn't take care of himself, there was always someone who would help. You can't be without a talisman, Daniel said. He believed in the power of the symbol, so he gave his own talisman to Kyle. It was an important decision he made to protect himself and his loved ones. The scarf that Daisy had sewn was now in Daniel's possession. He felt that it was a symbol of their relationship and connection with their family. Now he was ready to take responsibility for his own destiny and the destiny of those dear to him. Now they were even. But suddenly, a man entered their tent. He handed Daniel a letter, to which he immediately responded with interest. It was unclear what the message was. Daniel turned to the man and asked what had happened. He immediately realized that this was not just a letter being passed on, and his heart began to pound with excitement. Perhaps this was a sign from Olivia. The man reported that the messenger had delivered a letter. Daniel felt a little uneasy, but was also glad to have received the news. He did not know who could have sent the letter, but he soon received a reply. Daniel was eager to know who the letter was from. However, before he could examine it, Kyle snatched the letter from his hands. This was the moment when their interaction became more tense. Daniel tried to explain that it was a personal letter and asked Kyle to be more careful. He was surprised at how quickly Kyle intervened, but he also realized that he had his reasons. Kyle quickly read the letter and immediately realized that it was from Olivia. Daniel felt his heart flutter. This message was important, and he wanted to see its contents as soon as possible. Daniel grabbed the letter and began to read quickly. He saw Olivia's words. She wrote that she did not want him to get into dangerous situations. Her words warmed him, and he understood how much she cared. In the letter, Olivia also asked him to take care of himself. This was certainly her message, and Daniel felt his resolve strengthen. He promised himself that he would be careful for her sake. Daniel shared his decision with Kyle. He said that he had decided to transfer from the Vanguard to avoid unnecessary risks. This decision was due to his desire to protect himself for Olivia and his loved ones. Olivia's childhood was spent in the shadow of vague memories. She barely remembered anything from that time, but vague images of the past still remained in her mind like shadows from another world. Olivia was born when Kyle was just 4 years old. The little girl brought light into the house, but she was too young to understand how her family's life changed with her appearance. Daniel was always there for Kyle, supporting and protecting him like true brothers. From a very young age, they became inseparable, sharing every joy and challenge of childhood. Together with them, they learned fencing, enjoying the friendly company. Daisy was always there, joining them in these games, creating an atmosphere of happiness and fun. When Olivia came into the family life, continued along the same route. However, time did not stand still, and changes occurred every day, even if they remained unnoticed by others. 6 years after Olivia's birth, tragedy struck when Countess Cecilia died. This event deeply shocked everyone, leaving them with great grief and a sense of loss. The death of the Countess had a profound effect on everyone, especially the Count, who lost the ability to smile. And Kyle seemed to avoid Olivia, hiding his pain behind aloofness. When Olivia turned 16, Kyle and his father returned from the border. It was a momentous return, full of unexpected emotions, as they met Olivia again, almost a woman. When they saw Olivia, they immediately felt her striking resemblance to their late mother. This trait made their gazes freeze, as if she were an extension of what they had so lost. At that moment, something in the air changed. Everything around became colder, and even her body felt the frost. Olivia felt a strange uneasiness that came over her. When she saw that it was snowing outside, her face darkened. She realized that training would not take place today, and the feeling of anxiety for her health did not leave her. Olivia wondered what Kyle would say in this situation. He would probably talk her out of resting, saying that the weather was no obstacle to training because the enemies would not wait. Olivia couldn't help but smile, as she thought that she wasn't a kung fu master to practice even in the snow, and it was much more important to her to stay in good health than to expose herself to unnecessary risks. Keeping her body in good condition was her priority, and she was not going to take unnecessary risks, although she understood the importance of training for her development. The butler entered and greeted Olivia kindly, asking where she was going. He was always attentive and ready to offer her assistance in any endeavor. Olivia replied that she was going to the music room, and the butler offered to accompany her, showing his courtesy and desire to be useful. He also suggested lighting the fireplace to make it warmer, but Olivia noticed that the hall was still a little chilly, although this could not spoil her plans. The hall was just as she remembered it. It was a place where her mother often spent time, and it still held the memory of those days. Everything was just like many years ago when Olivia took her first steps in the world of dance learning from those closest to her, Kyle, Daisy, and Daniel. These memories were dear to her, and every corner of the hall was full of significance, reminding her of the time when she was still a child, but already had a taste for life. In the hall hung a portrait of the parents reflecting their beauty and elegance. Gerard Versace and Cecilia Argan de Colin, captured in the painting, seemed to live in this image. The portrait was painted before Cecilia's marriage, and her maiden name was written on the painting. It was a reminder of her past, which remained alive within these walls. Olivia was simply stunned when she first saw this portrait. Its elegance and beauty struck her, and she could not take her eyes off the image of her mother. She couldn't understand how she had managed to change her appearance so much, losing the natural beauty that her mother had. It remained a mystery to her. Looking at herself, Olivia realized that she really did look a lot like her mother. It hadn't been so obvious before, but now the resemblance was bright and noticeable. Olivia hadn't sat down at the piano in a long time. She chose a piece by Bach, an aria, in G major, and began to play, remembering how her older brother often played this music for her as a child. Her brother dreamed of becoming a famous pianist, and he always played this song for her. He was striving for his goal, and she often listened, admiring his talent and the feelings he put into the music. When she started playing, Olivia thought she could follow in his footsteps. They often played together as children, and although their parents laughed at their duet, it was a fun time for everyone. As the years went by, Olivia's brother continued to pursue his dream of becoming a musician, but she decided to take a different path and began studying martial arts, especially kendo, which became her new passion. Soon her brother left to go to music academy, fulfilling his dream. It was a significant moment for her, as she already understood how important it was to pursue her goal as he did. When Olivia was just entering her second year of high school, her brother suddenly committed suicide. He jumped from the roof of the academy, leaving her and her parents horrified and shocked by what happened. The police claimed it was suicide caused by academic and emotional difficulties. However, it was difficult for her and her parents to understand, because her brother always seemed strong and happy. Olivia's brother was so dedicated to music, he gave it his all and was always full of joy and inspiration. This loss has had a huge impact on everyone in the family, especially her, because he was her support system. Olivia couldn't understand how her brother could do such a thing. She didn't believe that he committed suicide. It was a complete surprise to her, and it didn't leave her mind for a long time. The parents also did not believe what had happened. It was a heavy blow to the family, and they could not accept that their son and brother had gone like this, leaving a void in their lives. Times had turned dark in their home. The sounds of the piano, once beloved, now brought only bitter memories, and each of them tried to cope with this painful sense of loss. The whole house remained the same, only the brother's room remained forever closed. Everyone tried to avoid the memories it evoked, as if the door to the past remained closed. But the Countess's hall did not cease to attract attention. She continued to visit it, and music became for her not just sounds, but a way to feel the breath of life that returned through these notes. Kyle and his father always enjoyed it when she played the piano for them. The music was connected to the memory of the Countess for them, and they felt it helped to keep her presence in their lives. Despite all these connections to the past, Olivia couldn't understand why they, unlike her parents, enjoyed music. For her, music was a source of pain and loss. For them, it was something that gave strength. Olivia refused to accept the idea that her brother had left of his own free will. She could not accept that he had decided to take his own life, and her heart was full of pain and unanswered questions. Music opened other doors for Olivia. When she played the piano, she tried to drown out her grief to escape reality, wanting her parents to understand a little bit of what she was feeling. As she played, she hoped that her parents might hear the music and feel everything she was going through. She wanted them to share her feelings, even if words couldn't express them. The head designer Julian was thrilled to finally reach the Versace family estate. It was a significant event, as it was his first visit since the Countess's passing, and it was a sign of respect for her memory. He was the first guest allowed into the room after she left. It was a sign of deep respect for the family and its traditions, as only the closest could afford to be there. At that moment, a woman approached Julian, and he was surprised to see that it was the lady she greeted him, which was unexpected and in some ways even unusual for him. The man was shocked when he realized that it was the lady standing in front of him. This was something new for him, and he had not expected such a turn of events when he met her in this hall. He greeted the lady politely and bowed to her as a sign of respect. This was his show of respect, as he knew how important a figure she was to this place. His name was Julian, and he had been tasked with preparing the outfit she wore when she entered the academy. It was an important task, and he understood its significance for her future. Olivia called Julian because she really liked the proposed design, and she didn't feel any need to feel shy about seeing how he would bring her ideas to life. Julian started to say that it was a great honor for him to work with such a lady. He was a little embarrassed because he did not expect Olivia to show interest in his work in such a way. Julian had heard rumors about the Duchess's large frame and tall stature. Olivia was 170 centimeters, but he had not expected her to be so impressive in size and appearance. Olivia asked about a corset for the outfit, but Julian refused, explaining that he had already created a similar design before and did not consider it necessary to add this element to the new one. He noted that a corset was definitely not needed for such an outfit. Instead, he asked her to wait a little as he wanted to carefully work out the details and offer something truly unique. Julian decided to highlight Olivia's natural curves, especially focusing on her neckline so that the outfit would perfectly match her figure and highlight her assets. Olivia turned to her maid and suggested that she look at the offered brochure, for now hoping that it would help her make a more informed decision about the design. After some time, Julian finally announced that he had completed the sketch. He was eagerly awaiting Olivia's reaction, because every stroke was important to him. He apologized sincerely to Olivia, explaining that when inspiration strikes him, he needs to immediately put all his thoughts on paper so as not to miss important moments. Olivia asked if she could see the finished work, and Julian began to explain that for an evening dress, it would be better to choose a simpler flared hem, avoiding excessive embellishment. Olivia expressed doubts about this simple option. She indicated that she needed more expressive solutions and suggested choosing darker shades that would highlight her strong facial features. After that, she continued to evaluate the outfits, choosing and rejecting one after another until she came to a decision. She was determined to find the perfect option that would highlight her style and personality. However, at some point, Olivia settled on one of the designs. She asked Julian not to continue saying that the outfit suited her perfectly, and she wanted to stick with it. Julian, seeing her reaction, noted with satisfaction that he was sure that Olivia would like this design. He was sure that she would look great in this outfit. Olivia confirmed her choice, saying that she really liked the design and wished the outfit was in a bright red color to make it stand out more. He said that it would be simply magnificent if the back were a little open. It would be much more beautiful. The lady did not want to agree to this, but he began to say that it was a sin to hide such a back of the Lady Olivia herself. Julian was sure that Olivia's back was simply mesmerizing. In his eyes, she was a real Nefertiti, the goddess of war and art. Her figure felt strong and graceful. However, Olivia did not agree with him. She still insisted on her own, wanting everything to remain as she had said earlier. She was unwavering in her decision. Julian, despite her insistence, did not give in. He continued to persuade her, saying that this was his deep desire and request. He begged her to at least think about it. Olivia, however, showed no interest. It was her back, and if someone wanted to touch it, she would not approve. She held her position. In response, Olivia asked what would happen if she did it her way, and showed him exactly what she meant. She drew something that was her solution to the situation. Julian was amazed by her resourcefulness. He recognized that Lady Olivia was a real genius. Her ideas were stunning. He realized how unusual her approach was. Olivia wondered when she would be able to see the result of his work. Julian reassured her, promising that she would receive it as soon as possible. He was not going to make her wait. He called her his muse, expressing admiration, and asked her to wait a little. Olivia, without resistance, agreed, and then said goodbye to him, letting him go with a light heart. The main goal of this business was to open a franchise of the studio, and Olivia decided to ask Daisy about the name of the store. She suggested the option, La LeBlanc. Daisy replied that she would be busy for the next 5 months. She would have to go to Tamir to open 5 stores in the eastern region. It was not an easy task. Olivia was surprised to hear that Daisy already knew everything. She hadn't yet had time to tell her about her plans, but the maid seemed to have some special intuition. Olivia wanted to send Julian, but she knew he didn't know the proper etiquette. They didn't want any trouble, so only Daisy could do the job. Daisy was sure that Julian could handle it alone. She believed that he was capable of selling clothes, even to a monster from the dark forest. He was so confident in himself. Olivia remarked that perhaps Daisy was having a hard time. However, the maid replied that it was not just difficult, but actually extremely difficult. The tasks were beyond her capabilities. Olivia acknowledged her wit, but it was not a joke. She seriously suggested that Daisy teach Julian manners and etiquette. It would be useful for his development. Daisy agreed, noting that the etiquette teacher would probably be less busy than the mistress. Oscar, in her opinion, should not object to such a proposal. If the owner had been another woman, she would probably have objected, but Oscar believed that Olivia was the one who handled such things best. She was experienced in this and knew how to solve problems. It was she who created Le LeBlanc. She did a brilliant job with this project and was finally able to relax a little and enjoy the rest she had long deserved. She had a letter from Daniel in her hands. He wrote that there was a lot of snow in this place now, as Mrs. Olivia had predicted, and that the snow had fallen on the Vanguard, as she had said. He also asked her not to overload herself with training. This concern sincerely pleased Olivia. She read these words with pleasure. She understood that her care for him was important to him. Daniel reported that it was snowing in his area too. The boots that Mrs. Olivia had sent him were very warm and comfortable. The snow reminded him of her eyes, pure and white as snowflakes. He also added that he might be coming home sooner than expected. Olivia was surprised when she read this, because she did not expect his return to be so close. At first, she thought that it was about him perceiving her as cold, and that his return would not be as joyful as she would like. It was the last letter she received from him from China. It brought mixed feelings, but left an indelible mark on her soul. Olivia hadn't responded to the letter yet. She was still thinking about what he wanted to convey to her. She was preoccupied with her thoughts, not knowing what to answer. The letter from Daniel was in her hands, and Olivia felt her hands tremble slightly as she read his words. These letters always made her nervous, even when they were so simple. Daniel thanked her for always taking care of the supplies and always being supportive. The quick return meant he was doing a good job, and that made him happy. He mentioned that they would see each other next week. Olivia wondered why his letter seemed so formal. Maybe he wanted to emphasize the importance of his mission. She thought that perhaps her own letter had been too much of a burden for him, although she didn't mean for it to be perceived that way. Olivia couldn't understand why her eyes were interpreted this way. She thought they were beautiful, and couldn't understand that her face had such a strong influence on how other people perceived her. He even signed the letter with his last name. The snow he wrote about penetrated her soul and caused a feeling of cold in her heart. The same cold as outside the window. She dreamed of being born again, but she felt that this would only bring more difficulties, and that the next life might be even more difficult than the present one. In fact, she didn't give up. Deep down, she hoped that Daniel would come back into this life, and that they could be together, despite all the difficulties. A week ago, before Olivia received the letter from Daniel, an important meeting took place in the dark forest that made her think about many things. Kyle asked Daniel what he was doing. Daniel continued to rewrite the letter he had sent second. He didn't like the way it sounded, so he decided to make some adjustments. He wondered what part of the letter he could make Miss Olivia uncomfortable so as not to offend her. He was concerned that his words might be misunderstood. Kyle read the letter and didn't find anything strange in it, but Daniel had a different opinion. In his opinion, the letter was too frank and needed to be changed. He thought his emotions were too strong in the letter, especially in the lines about the snow and her eyes. It felt like a love letter, and he wasn't sure it was the right thing to write. Kyle noted that perhaps the letter really wasn't what it seemed, and suggested that Daniel just let those thoughts go, so as not to worry too much. He noticed that snow always brought cold with it, and this could not be a good sign. The snow squelched under his feet, creating an unpleasant feeling of cold. Daniel looked at the snow and thought that it was white and fragile like her, as if comparing her to this winter phenomenon. It was a subtle and figurative gesture on his part. He considered that perhaps he should just write her last name. A simple first name might feel burdensome, but adding a last name might make the letter less stressful. Kyle noticed that Daniel was acting strange and that he should just put the letter aside and rest. He suggested that he get some sleep and not think about what was written. The man was shocked when he learned that Daisy and Oscar were going to Tamir. It was unexpected, and he could not believe such news. The secretary couldn't understand at all why they weren't taking him along. He tried to understand the situation, but all he could do was complain about his lack of understanding of what was happening. Oscar said that he was very serious about this matter and suggested that the secretary go instead of him. He was sure that he would be able to cope with the important task and perform it at the highest level. Daisy was completely perplexed by Oscar's words. She could not understand how Sam could cope with such a responsible job, which obviously required more experience and skills. She thought Sam was much more suited to the position of boss. This made sense as his experience and abilities could be put to much better use in another role. Oscar asked her disapprovingly what kind of trick she was using now, and noted that her words were not funny at all. He was not in the mood for such jokes. Daisy remained confused, not understanding what Oscar was talking about. She simply claimed that she was telling the truth and saw no point in his objections. The argument between them got so heated that the secretary even felt a little happy. He was glad that the two of them were starting to quarrel, which gave him some relief. He thought that their quarrel was much better than the silence of Mrs. Olivia, who did not even ask whether she would take him with her and did not say anything about her decision. The secretary said he didn't want to take their place, but only hoped they could all go together. He was willing to support their team, but he didn't want to be left out. He wished them a safe journey, and barely holding back his tears, hurried away, unable to stay with them in such an emotional situation. Oscar couldn't understand what had happened to him. He was shocked that the secretary suddenly burst into tears and ran away for no apparent reason. Daisy began to say that it was all because of Oscar. She blamed him, although she did not know why he could be the cause of such a strong emotional outburst in the secretary. Oscar didn't understand how this could have anything to do with him. Daisy kept insisting that if anything went wrong, it was always Oscar's fault, even though he didn't know what he had done wrong. The outer courtyard of the Versace hotel here was given the important information about the alibi that the gentleman had ordered to be obtained. He expected that it would help in the investigation. Giorgio showed a letter, the owner of which turned out to be the daughter of the Versace family. This was important evidence that could explain a lot about the events that were taking place. There was very little information about Olivia. They only knew that she was an excellent swordsman and rarely communicated with people, preferring to remain in the shadows. It was also revealed that Olivia personally runs her family's business and governs the province of Hershey. She was an influential person in the region. The gentleman asked about the North and assumed that it was the province of Hershey. He was interested in this piece of information and was waiting for clarification. The city was very clean and well kept. It seemed that people lived in abundance, enjoying a high standard of living and all the benefits of prosperity. Even in the poorest areas of the city, free hospitals were built, which demonstrated a high level of social responsibility and concern for citizens. All this was completely contrary to the rumors that had been circulating 3 years ago. Back then, people were saying that the city was in poverty and ruin, but now everything had changed for the better. The prince was surprised to learn that they had not been able to meet. This did not correspond with his expectations, and he did not hide his amazement at this circumstance. Giorgio, with a serious expression on his face, said that the lady was not feeling well, so they could not meet. He explained that Olivia was not feeling well, and this prevented their meeting. Giorgio tried to visit the sick woman, but Olivia, despite his requests, refused. She did not want to accept visits, and preferred to remain alone, not opening the door even for him. Apparently, Olivia had a high temperature and was really unwell. In any case, her condition should improve, and as they say tomorrow, they will receive an answer that will allow the prince to meet her. Giorgio asked where he had learned this news. The prince replied that he had heard it by chance in a pub, but he did not specify who had shared this information with him. The prince expressed doubt that he should tell Giorgio that he had personally investigated the matter. Giorgio remarked that he himself was going to a party organized by the squad. The prince was struck by her beauty and charm. Giorgio, in turn, asked him not to fall in love with Olivia when he met her the next day, because she was too attractive for that. The prince thought Giorgio was strange, because even if Olivia had brought changes to the world of Versace and Hershey, she was not someone who deserved such attention. Olivia was independent and self-sufficient. Olivia rejected Giorgio, considering him too stupid. The next day, the party began, and everyone around was absorbed in preparations, not paying attention to her refusal. It was incredibly awkward for the crown prince to stand in front of a strange family's door, especially on such an important day when the whole situation was tense and unusual for him. Under the huge wings of the Red Falcon was Olivia Versace. The nights passed by her house, and Olivia watched their movement with pride, clearly feeling like an important figure in their world. The women in the area whispered that Lady Olivia was proud of her knights. For many, this was incredible, because no one expected her to be so young as to understand the importance of these events. Locals suspected that the idea of the knights belonged to Olivia herself. It is unclear how she could come up with this idea at such a young age, but her determination and leadership skills left no doubt. The prince recalled Giorgio talking about his inability to take his eyes off Olivia. He admitted that he knew she was beautiful, but he could not help but admire her. Giorgio said that, despite everything, he couldn't help but keep his eyes on Olivia. He knew it was wrong, but he couldn't do anything about it. Today, the prince wanted to apologize to Giorgio, realizing that he had previously treated him as if he were crazy. He admitted his mistake and was ready to apologize for his previous behavior. Everything Giorgio said turned out to be true. Olivia was exactly as she was described. Beautiful, smart, confident, and this was confirmed by her every action. Olivia was happy because her father and brother were back home, and Daniel was with them. Tomorrow was her birthday, and she was ready to celebrate this moment, surrounded by her loved ones. Olivia believed that the news of her impending separation from her loved ones was exaggerated. However, when she finally accepted the fact, she thanked everyone for their support and understanding. After the tragic loss of her brother, Olivia never showed her pain. She was strong, and tears were not her way of coping with loss, even if her soul was suffering. But now that her father had returned, Olivia couldn't help but throw herself into his arms. Her joy was immeasurable, and she couldn't hide her feelings, finally feeling relieved. Everyone present was shocked by her behavior. The father, slightly embarrassed, asked her to calm down and not to shout. He returned home, and everything fell into place as it should have been. The prince was shocked when he saw such a scene. He watched Olivia, her father and brother, as well as Gerald, the Earl of the Line, and the Guardian of the Empire, which added even more importance to the moment. Also present at the time were Daniel Meridian and Kyle Versace, both known as legends in the Academy, making the whole situation even more significant. People like them don't often show their feelings so openly in such places. However, they didn't hide their emotions, and it added sincerity and humanity to the whole event. At this time, Giorgio, absorbed in reading books, suddenly heard a sound outside the window. This attracted his attention, and he felt that something unusual was about to happen. It was Crown Prince Leonardo, who upon entering the room noticed that the boy was standing on bare feet. He noticed that the young man had seen something, but he did not even understand what was being discussed. The Crown Prince noticed that, although he had seen the lady from afar, and for a short time, fortunately, he had noticed that she had already recovered, and everything seemed to be in order. This calmed him down a little. Leonardo, lost in thought, turned to his cousin and expressed interest in what would happen if the lady for some reason chose another man instead of him. This thought somehow bothered him. He could not help but ask his cousin how he would act in case the lady chose another rather than him. It was an important assumption that tormented him. Giorgio, having listened to him, answered with confidence that this could not be, since the lady's taste was unchangeable. He was sure that her preferences would remain the same, despite possible doubts. The crown prince, looking at his cousin in bewilderment, still could not understand why he was so sure of this. He asked him what he would do if the lady chose another, and he calmly replied that he could handle it. However, after thinking again, Giorgio added that in that case, he would have to get rid of the competitor. He was ready to do anything to make sure he was not to her taste, and if necessary, simply destroy him. Father congratulated everyone on their safe return. This banquet is top-notch, so they are all very happy. The pork is ready to eat. Now it's probably ready, so it's worth cutting it up. Then they can eat it. Olivia said that she would go first and wished them a good evening and good night. But suddenly, someone addressed her, and she was surprised, turning back. It was Daniel, so she was scared. For 2 months. She wanted to get closer to him. But no matter how you look at it, they have nothing to talk about with him. By the way, he has become even cooler. The crown prince thought that his cousin was definitely crazy, and Giorgio was already thinking about what he would do with this man. He remarked that this guy was very lucky, and Giorgio began to say that it was just a joke. What he just said is not a joke, but the truth. That guy died, so he'll definitely think about protecting himself. Besides, if it's his girl, he'll fight for her. It's Giorgio, and he'll do as he says. But if he were the crown prince, like getting the powers of the north, marrying that lady would be the smartest decision. Then the crown prince caught himself thinking that he was thinking about something completely different from what he needed to be thinking about. Even if Giorgio's like that, the colored prince is also a little crazy. It's Olivia's 18th birthday. The maids were simply delighted. Mrs. Olivia was very beautiful. They embarrassed her a little, and Daisy said that it was time for him to go. The father was in complete shock when he saw his beautiful daughter. Father said that Olivia looked absolutely beautiful today. The girl noticed that she was just like her dad and offered her hand to her father. After that, they did not go down, and her father noted that tomorrow was the day she would leave the academy. Olivia said that she would be back soon, and Oscar and Daisy would also be going with her, so there was no need to worry. While she is in the capital, she is thinking of joining forces with some other trading shops. Olivia planned to open 10 stores, hoping for the success of their business. Her father, reading about the market situation, believed that the current stores were quite sufficient, even if she opened more. If small stores appear in their area, they will hardly be able to get rid of them. But if the stores are medium-sized, they will either be used or swallowed up by large competitors. Olivia and her father knew that they would have to work hard in the trade to succeed, and they would have to be prepared for any challenges that might arise. However, they knew that they would only experience true power when they themselves demonstrated it, not when someone else judged their actions. It was a process of self-expression. Her father reminded Olivia that she could always count on his and Kyle's support, because they were always there and ready to help in any endeavor, no matter what happened. Olivia, smiling, replied that she trusted them both completely, and this trust filled her soul as the most important part of her life, which brought her confidence. Olivia was a daddy's girl, and that filled her with pride. Remembering moments from her childhood, her father saw her again on that threshold, just like when she was a little girl. At this time, Count Gerard and Lady Olivia entered the party, attracting the attention of all those present, which was a great event for all the guests of this important evening. The father thanked the guests for their presence at his daughter's 18th birthday celebration and expressed deep gratitude to everyone who shared this moment of joy with them. He wished everyone a good evening, and the festive atmosphere was so lively that all the guests enjoyed the splendor and solemnity of the moment. The defenders of the empire were always close by, standing under the wing of the Red Falcon, who protected the north from all threats, giving everyone confidence in their safety. Olivia became a symbol of this security, and her merits did not go unnoticed, for which she was respected and honored, knowing that she would always stand guard. After that, Olivia chatted with the other ladies, having fun in the company, maintaining a festive atmosphere, and enjoying the moment. After a while, her father approached Olivia and asked her to dance with him, and this moment became another important milestone for her in celebrating her birthday. Olivia replied with a smile that it was a great honor for her to dance with him, and at that moment, she expressed her respect and gratitude by calling him Excellency. Her father, however, did not agree with her words, saying that she should dance the first dance with him because this moment was important for their relationship. In response to her doubts, her father jokingly said that if she did not agree, Kyle would not go anywhere tomorrow. although the boy still did not understand why his father always used this argument. The father noted that if Olivia did not agree, he could give birth to a daughter himself, demonstrating his determination and funny side in such a serious situation. Soon Daniel approached him and said that he needed to talk to him, which clearly meant an important conversation that should not be postponed. Kyle was stunned to learn that the crown prince himself had arrived for the celebration. Daniel said that the prince had ordered that no other nobles be allowed in unless they had permission. Kyle admitted that he himself did not know about the crown prince's visit, nor did he expect him to show up in person. He did not know that this important event was so important to everyone. At this point, Kyle only checked the temple and the hotel he planned to stay at to make sure they were in good condition and ready for guests. The crown prince was rumored to have returned to the Wharf Temple the night before, adding even more intrigue to his presence at the celebration. Kyle told Daniel that he had an important request for him, which surprised his interlocutor, and he clarified what exactly he was talking about. Kyle asked if Daniel would like to go with Olivia to Tamir, as it could be their last chance, and he did not want to miss this opportunity. Daniel, as a representative of his family, stood by Olivia's defense, showing his willingness to support her in any circumstances. He was always there to protect her from any external threats. She played an important role in the family affairs, acting as both father and son of the Versace family. These roles were necessary in light of the family's active activities, which continued to thrive abroad. At that moment, Olivia was on the dance floor, enjoying the moment dancing in the company of her brother. It was an important event for her in which she felt free and happy. Olivia told him that he was stupid and couldn't dance. However, the guy justified himself, claiming that he was stepping on her feet and couldn't dance at all, which was definitely not his strong point. She was a real favorite of all. She received not only love, but also great respect from everyone who knew her, which could not help but cause admiration in those around her. His feelings for her began to change the moment she asked him to teach her how to use a sword. That day became a turning point when she showed interest in something serious. Olivia was firm that he had to teach her. It was her order, and her determination left no room for doubt. He had to teach her this art. It all started 3 years ago when Olivia was only 15 years old. It was a moment that became the starting point for their further relationship and interactions. It was hard not to notice Miss Olivia, whom he encountered in the training hall. She resembled one of the countesses, but her seriousness and determination left no doubt. Olivia was dead serious, and her determination made him feel both anxious and respectful. It added an extra layer of mystery to her image. Daniel said that the lady was doing very well with the training, to which Olivia replied that it was all easy, and she was able to cope with any difficulties. Pauline then thought that she should start working with increased complexity to progress faster. Everything should be at a higher level. The lady was shocked and told Daniel that she could not work at this pace any longer. It was too much for her, and she could not continue in the same mode. However, Daniel Gavriloff was confident that she could handle it. He insisted that she continue and said that she needed to do 2 more laps, and then everything would be fine. Olivia felt like her lungs were going to explode, but Daniel assured her that everything was fine. He assured her that her body would not be harmed and that everything would be fine if she continued. Daniel enjoyed the moments when she showed her unexpected side. He especially enjoyed training with her when she acted mature and determined. Olivia never trained for days, but she didn't allow herself to take the easy way out. She was striving for real results and didn't give in to persuasion. Daniel approached training with complete seriousness, not relying on luck. For him, training was a real challenge and an important step on the road to success. Because of this, Daniel couldn't afford to give others a chance. He was determined to win, and Olivia couldn't be an exception in his training process. For him, not being able to fight fairly was a sign of disrespect for the enemy. He was sure that the enemy would not spare her because of her age or gender, and this was important to take into account. Olivia suggested trying again. She didn't see anything impossible in it and was ready to continue training despite all the difficulties. From that day on, she was no longer just a little girl to him. In his eyes, she had already become something more, a real queen worthy of respect. In his eyes, Olivia became a queen, the embodiment of beauty and grace. Even despite her strange dances, she was an important figure to him. Olivia didn't like dancing, But she danced so much with this guy that she ended up hurting her feet badly. She didn't expect it to lead to such consequences. After the dance, Daniel knocked on her door and said he wanted to come in. He noticed that she was feeling pain in her legs and offered to help. Olivia let him in, but immediately noticed that her legs really hurt, although in fact she didn't like dancing with him. She was just tired. She claimed that everything was fine and that she didn't need help despite the pain. She just didn't enjoy dancing with him, and it left her disappointed. Daniel offered to get her something to drink, but Olivia declined, saying that everything would be fine. She tried to hide her tiredness and not show weakness. She invited him to sit next to her. When he sat down, they just sat in silence, enjoying the peace. But there was some tension in the air. It was a time when they were alone. In a quiet environment, away from everyone, they felt that this could be a moment for something more. Olivia felt so good that she couldn't be happier. She enjoyed this time despite all the previous events, and couldn't hide her joy. Daniel noticed her joy and asked what was wrong. She quickly replied that it was nothing special. She was just enjoying good music, not wanting to go into details. Olivia noticed that, if she got married, it would be the end, so she decided to say everything at once without waiting for a more appropriate moment. She reminded Daniel that she was leaving for the academy tomorrow and hoped that nothing would change between them despite her departure. Daniel didn't know how to respond because the situation was complicated. He didn't know how to react because everything was so vague and without context. Olivia said that because she was leaving, they wouldn't be able to see each other. She asked him not to fall in love with other girls because she wouldn't be around. She promised that she would be back soon. If he waited, everything would work out and they could continue what they had started. Olivia hoped that she would pass her final exam quickly so that she could return in a year. She sincerely believed that Daniel would support her decision and would not let her down without doubting her plans. Daniel, however, noted that this task would be very difficult and challenging. He understood that she would face many obstacles, and his words made Olivia a little hesitant. Olivia couldn't understand why Daniel was so direct. She thought his frankness was too harsh and unflattering because it put her in the awkward position of demanding frankness in return. The situation was difficult, and Olivia decided to quickly change the subject to avoid awkwardness. She stood up, hoping that her actions would not surprise him, because she was looking for a way to distract herself from an unpleasant conversation. Olivia suggested that Daniel go dancing to switch to a lighter topic and not discuss unpleasant things. She hoped that this would allow both of them to relax and avoid further misunderstandings. Once Olivia changed the subject, she felt relieved. She was happy to have been able to refocus her attention, and she and Daniel headed to the dance floor, hoping that this moment would brighten the atmosphere. Olivia decided that now was the time to start dancing. She signaled to the musicians to start playing a song that she thought was perfect for getting them to dance. Daniel recognized the song immediately, although it was not often played at aristocratic banquets. It was familiar to him from other occasions, and he remembered how it surprised people when it was played. Although the song was not often heard in aristocratic circles, it was adored by Northerners. The dance it accompanied was called the courting dance and was popular among the freer classes. The point of this dance was that it didn't matter who the partner was. It was important to invite the one who attracted attention. Olivia understood that dancing this dance with someone was a manifestation of special feelings. The dance was a kind of confession. An invitation to it meant that the person was in love. Olivia knew that those around her would understand this, and that this dance would reveal her true feelings. If Daniel had been sure of her feelings, he would probably have calmly asked her to dance. But apparently, it was difficult for him to take a step that was so obvious to her. However, Daniel said that it would be better to wait for the next song to dance to. He wasn't sure that courtship dance was the right choice, and suggested changing it to something more neutral. Olivia was horrified by this answer because she had been looking forward to this day. She could not allow him to refuse such a dance, and her disappointment was obvious. Olivia realized she needed to try a different approach. She decided she wouldn't let him get away with this idea and would insist on dancing to this particular song. Olivia said that she had wanted to dance to the song so much that she would be very sad if Lord Daniel refused. She hoped that this would persuade him to change his mind. Olivia reminded him that Daniel, as her knight and escort, had a duty to protect her honor, including preventing other young men from approaching her for a dance. That was part of his role. It was hard for her, but Olivia felt there were no other options. She insisted that they dance this dance despite his doubts and resistance. This dance was a symbol of her connection with Daniel, and she felt it had to happen. Now, say Olivia believed that this was not just an ordinary dance, but an important moment in their relationship. Olivia started to walk away, but suddenly she felt Daniel grab her hand and tell her that she would be dancing this dance with him. He couldn't let her go that easily. Daniel was confident in his abilities, and despite all the doubts, he had mastered this dance perfectly. He knew that he would be able to show everything he was capable of at this moment. Olivia noticed that Daniel had been against the dance just recently, and it surprised her. She couldn't understand what had made him change his mind so quickly, but she decided not to dwell on it. Daniel admitted that he had always wanted to do this dance. His words were sincere, and he really hoped that this moment would be special for both of them. Daniel got down on one knee in front of Olivia, like a true knight, and with complete seriousness, asked her to do him the honor of dancing this dance with him, sincerely hoping for her consent. Olivia, being kind and considerate, could not refuse him, and with a smile agreed to his request, accepting this gesture as respect and a sign of attention on his part. They started dancing, and Olivia felt confident, enjoying the moment. She was pleased with herself. There was peace in her soul, because at that moment, the dance became not only physical for her, but also emotional. During the dance, they did not take their eyes off each other. Their eyes met, which enhanced the atmosphere of mutual understanding and trust, without words, but with deep meaning in every movement. He, always reserved and noble, looked different this time. His expression was full of emotions, and it made her heart move as if it was ready to burst from these new sensations. At that moment, everything around seemed secondary, and Olivia felt that perhaps she had become much more than just a dance companion for him, that something more important had arisen between them. Everyone around them was watching them, and although Olivia was the center of attention, they knew that if she decided to leave, no one would dare disturb Daniel's peace or violate his wishes. Daniel, turning to Olivia, said something quietly, but his words were unintelligible. The lady could not understand what he meant, but she felt that it was something important but incomplete. Olivia, not understanding his words, asked him again, to which Daniel replied that he had not said anything special, making her feel that perhaps he was hiding something, but she did not insist on it. At this point, Olivia felt a little embarrassed. Kyle, noticing her reaction, turned to her father with interest, asking if he noticed how she smiled like a child, which made her heart beat faster. The father replied that he had seen her smile too, but had not attached much importance to it, stating that it was ordinary joy, and that her eyes spoke more than the moment of dance itself, creating an atmosphere of warmth and closeness. It was a dance of respect, and Olivia was glad that it was so enjoyable. But Daniel, still somewhat surprised by what was happening, asked if this was what he thought it should be. The lady thought that Daniel was most likely related to the Meridian family, and perhaps his participation in the dance was not accidental, since his origin determined many moments in this society. Countess Halkan, a well-known figure in Northern society, watched the dance closely and remarked that she had not known of Daniel's talent. His ability to dance so exquisitely surprised her, as if he had hidden his skills. Baroness Valmonchild, a close friend of Daniel's mother, commented that the hearts of young ladies would not be able to bear it, because such a dance is capable of charming and captivating the heart of everyone who is in its presence. The other woman thought Lord Daniel was an unfeeling man, but his gaze was so intense and full of pain that she suspected him of having feelings for Lady Olivia. The Countess, watching him, began to think that it was quite possible that his feelings for Olivia were genuine. If someone could fall in love with a woman like her, then it was entirely justified. However, despite possible feelings, Lady Olivia was the daughter of an earl, which put Lord Daniel in a lower position. The Meridian family did not have the same high status as her family. Among the 10 most famous swordmasters in the kingdom, 2 were from their family, and Daniel's father himself was also a master. This gave his family a certain respect, but still lower than the Countess's family. Lord Daniel would not refuse an alliance with the Versace family, as it would greatly raise their social status, and they could improve their position in the kingdom. Despite all the circumstances, he was forgiven for much, because of his appearance and inner qualities. He was a good person, which also played a big role in his environment. These two, Daniel and Olivia, really suited each other. And after a while, Daniel wondered where Mrs. Olivia had disappeared, to not noticing her among the guests. Soon he met Olivia's gaze, who was standing with a glass of wine in her hands. She looked at him, and their eyes met, which immediately caught his attention. Coming closer to her, he asked if she had drunk all the wine in her glass. He looked concerned, wanting to make sure she was okay. Olivia replied with a smile that she had only had a little drink, just one glass, and that it couldn't make her drunk. She assured him that everything was fine, and she didn't feel drunk. Kyle, who was nearby, said that Olivia had clearly drunk more than she was admitting. Other guests also noticed her behavior and began to voice their doubts. Kyle claimed that she was clearly drunk and that her condition reminded him of Daisy's situation. This remark made Olivia feel uneasy. Daniel apologized, explaining that she had only had a glass of champagne and he couldn't interfere with her choice. He felt a little guilty about what had happened. Daniel's father, noticing his concern, said that nothing serious had happened, but asked that Olivia be taken to her room to avoid the attention of the other guests before the situation escalated. Kyle insisted that Daniel take her away immediately before she did anything inappropriate or got out of control. He didn't want her condition to become a topic of discussion. Olivia objected, saying that she didn't want to leave. She reminded him that her life would change from tomorrow, and she wouldn't see some people anymore. She even got into a little fight with her brother. At this time, Kyle wondered where Daisy had disappeared, as she had not been seen among the guests for a long time. He could not understand where she had gone and what had happened to her. Daisy stood at the fountain at the time, thoughtfully looking at the water. Her thoughts were far away, and she did not notice that someone was watching her. As the gentleman approached her, Daisy turned to see Kyle standing in front of her. He came close, and their eyes met as if they both expected something from this meeting. Kyle, with interest in his voice, remarked that he had heard about her trip to Tamir. Daisy confirmed this, explaining that she was going there to open Le Bon stores in that city. Kyle asked if he should come too. Daisy noticed that he was clearly worried about Miss Olivia, which left her with a certain question about his feelings. Kyle noticed that it was not as Daisy thought. He was worried about her future, and her condition. His concern for Mrs. Daisy went beyond mere friendship. Kyle began to think that he would miss Mistress Daisy when they were not together. He realized how much he had grown attached to her, and how difficult it would be without her. Daisy didn't understand why Kyle was so worried and talking about being bored. She couldn't understand why those words had such meaning and what they really meant to him. Kyle noted that men were usually flighty, especially in the places he frequented. The lady did not understand why Kyle was so interested in her relationships with men from Tamir. Daisy didn't want to be afraid and shake with fear anymore. She decided that now she would be more confident and ask directly what she was interested in without hiding her feelings. Suddenly, Kyle asked Daisy if she remembered how they drank alcohol 4 years ago. He wanted her to remember what happened then and what she said. Daisy couldn't understand why Kyle asked that. He just wanted her to remember what happened that day and what exactly she said. That was what interested him. Daisy screamed that she wasn't the type of girl who couldn't remember anything. After drinking, Kyle, in turn, said that he had decided to go to Tamir next year. The lady asked him what exactly he meant. Kyle said that when he got to the city, he would contact her. He didn't want her to worry, but that would be later. Daisy asked him to wait, but if he was shaken again, if the situation became too difficult, he would risk his life. She didn't want him to die. Daisy was starting to get worried again. Her feelings were overwhelmed. She was expecting something important, something that would change everything, but she couldn't figure out what it was. When he spoke like that, Daisy began to feel at a loss, not knowing what to do or how to act. Everything became too confusing, and she did not know how to respond. 4 years ago, a banquet was held at the Versace castle to celebrate the new year and the return of the troops. It was an important moment that everyone will remember. At that banquet, Mrs. Riviere was given flowers by her fiancé. He accompanied his every action with declarations of love. His feelings were sincere despite the difficulties. The flowers were beautiful, and Daisy heard someone say that Kyle was coming to the reception. This caught her attention because his presence was special. The thought that Kyle was going to confess his feelings to Miss Janet flashed through the conversation. It became a topic of discussion among those present, attracting everyone's attention. Kyle's face turned red when he was spotted with Janet. The two looked like they were really compatible, and it was obvious to everyone around them. They also discussed how Miss Daisy had once received flowers from her fiancé as a child. It was a long time ago, and now these memories caused nostalgic feelings in everyone. Daisy replied that when she was a child, it was just a joke for her. She did not take flowers seriously because they did not have the meaning they might have now. Now, after so much time had passed, she realized that that moment had been important, but she herself no longer remembered the details. Childhood was gone, but the memories remained. Kyle ran to Daniel and screamed that they were in trouble. Something had happened with Daisy and the alcohol, and he didn't know how to handle the situation. Daisy got very drunk, and Daniel, concerned about the girl's condition, turned to Kyle and asked if he realized what he had done. The situation was clearly getting out of control. Daniel reminded that Kyle knows very well that Daisy can't drink, and it is his responsibility to monitor her condition. Kyle, however, insisted that he did not give her anything to drink and does not deserve reproach. Daniel wasted no time asking who had gotten Daisy drunk. Kyle replied that he didn't know who had done it, but had barely dragged her to that place and put her to bed, unable to ask. At this point, Daniel noticed that he had heard that Kyle intended to confess. Today, Kyle was shocked by this news and asked if it really counted as a confession. In response, Daniel said that Kyle would find the drunk girl and do everything right. It sounded almost like a threat, and Kyle didn't know how to respond to such confidence. The gentleman remarked that they should be quieter, otherwise, if Daisy woke up, everyone would be in an unpleasant situation, and no one would want to take the blame for her condition. When Daisy started to say something about confessing, Kyle was relieved that she was coming to her senses. He was glad that she was conscious again, and that their conversation could perhaps continue. However, Daisy screamed in horror that Kyle should not even think about confessing. She did not want him to make any moves towards her, especially such serious ones. She said that he should not spend money on her, let alone give her flowers. This was her categorical demand, and she clearly did not think about his feelings. Kyle tried to remind her that they had both already agreed on the future and decided to get married. But Daisy just shook her head, not believing in the seriousness of these words. The girl began to cry and confessed that she didn't want this, that he was a real fool, and all his behavior irritated her. The tears flowed, but the words did not bring relief. Kyle, seeing her tears, said that if she didn't want it, then they really wouldn't get married. He agreed with her decision and wanted to console her. He gently wiped away her tears and quietly said that it was his fault, and she shouldn't cry because of his actions. He regretted how things had turned out between them. Daniel walked up to Kyle and reminded him that he said he didn't do anything. He just came here. It seemed like he didn't want to be part of this conflict. Daisy grabbed Kyle's arm, and he immediately shut up. She was putting pressure on him again, not giving him a chance to escape from his words and actions. The girl pulled Kyle towards her and suddenly kissed him right on the lips. It was an unexpected but decisive gesture that indicated her dominance in the relationship. She declared that he would now belong to her, and as soon as he turned 20, they would immediately get married. She was confident in her decision, not paying attention to his reaction. Kyle was shocked by what was happening, and Daisy added with a serious look that if he met another girl, she would kill him. It was a strange but decisive warning. Daniel, approaching Kyle, told him that he was a real idiot because he didn't resist and stood calmly. He couldn't understand how Kyle could allow himself to be so passive. Kyle smiled and replied that Daisy had kissed him and proposed marriage. He seemed a little confused, but he couldn't hide his slight joy at the unusual situation. He admitted that he couldn't get away from the topic, but today he was happy, even though he was alone. Everything that was happening seemed strange, but at that moment he felt good being who he was. Daisy got drunk and couldn't remember anything. The banquet ended, and the day came to leave for the academy. A warp was opened for the girl from the temple to the capital of Tamir. There were 3 people who were supposed to arrive in Tamir: Olivia, Daisy, and Oscar. Daniel said that he would accompany them on the trip. He decided to go with them despite the plans of the other participants. His decision was unexpected, but he was sure that it was the right one. He believed that the girl must have understood what had happened the night before, and that he would be there. This was because the situation required additional support from him. The lady was surprised by his words and began to recall the events. She remembered everything up until the moment they started dancing, but she could not understand why Daniel decided to join them. The girl then expressed her point of view, stating that none of this mattered, and asked why Daniel had decided to go with them to Tamir if it was not part of her plans. He was the person who should have accompanied Miss Olivia from the beginning. However, if she lives in the academy, then the need for his presence and protection disappears. Daniel had probably explained all this to her the day before, and she couldn't understand why she had done it. She was ashamed of her behavior, and she felt terrible about it. Daniel had correctly assumed that she did not like his presence in their company, and it showed he understood her feelings, although he could not quite share them. However, the lady hastened to assure him that he was mistaken, and that everything was not as he thought. She saw no problem with him going, but still doubted the necessity of his participation. It wasn't because there wouldn't be a night on the trip, but rather because it was simply a waste of manpower. She thought it would be better if he focused on more important duties. She explained that it made no sense to waste a knight who would normally sit in residence and only come out on weekends. He still had to work, and that was the point. She asked what could be better than being a knight of the Red Falcon Academy. Daniel replied that perhaps staying where he was would be better for everyone. The lady agreed with his assumption, adding that it seemed he had just chuckled. She noticed this but did not dwell on his reaction. She then asked if he had been fired by accident. If so, she was prepared to deal with it. The guy said he had made the decision to leave his position himself. In the temple of the sacred land of Hershey Milo, Ulshkamerger of the Sun Palace greeted Olivia, the daughter of the first Empress Cecilia. He was respectful, but his gaze was a little wary. The lady asked him to raise his head and accompany them. It was a gesture that emphasized her confidence and calm in the situation. He immediately obeyed her request. The scene she saw reminded her of the events described in the novel. It was the place where the emperor's action was explained in such a way as to prevent all the misfortunes that threatened Olivia. Milo's address to them and his mention of Argan's middle name caught her attention. The name had always been associated with the Imperial family, and she felt it had significance. The name Argan can now only be used by members of the Imperial family or those they officially recognize. It was an important element emphasizing their status and belonging. When Alfred the Emperor's first father was still the crown prince, he was going to marry the Emperor Argan's daughter. But it soon became clear that Cecilia Olivia's mother was pregnant. However, just a week before the wedding, Argan collapsed, and the crown prince was forced to marry another girl from an aristocratic family, which came as a surprise to everyone. The Dacaran imperial family granted Argan's daughter the status of concubine of the crown prince. This led to the birth of Cecilia, who became an imperial daughter. Her background was high aristocratic. That part of the story was grand and filled with important events, unlike the current moment, which seemed much more mundane and unnoticeable. Her life no longer had the significance it once had. Olivia had to tell this story to justify her actions and gain forgiveness. Her actions could be considered a crime, and she hoped for acquittal. However, her fate, according to the author, was predetermined by death. The female lead had no intention of allowing the crown prince to remain untouched and continue to accumulate influence. She did not want his wealth or reputation to remain untouched. She felt tired and did not understand why she had to justify herself. In her eyes, both the emperor and the crown prince were people who could not be trusted despite their high positions. The imperial palace of Dacaran, or the Sun Palace, was what it was called because of the enormous amount of money that went into its construction. It was a symbol of the empire's luxury and grandeur. Olivia was shocked when she first saw the palace. The grandeur and scope of the place was impressive. The Sun Palace was truly as grand as expected. The man informed them that only Lord Meridian and Milady Versace could proceed. These two were invited, and were allowed to proceed in light of the imperial orders. He also added that His Majesty the Emperor was awaiting their arrival. These words were important, as they emphasized that their visit was official and important for the court. The moment had finally arrived for the final leg of their journey. Olivia, who had come from the outlying duchy of Versace, felt the warmth and bright sun of the Deccan Empire. Daniel Baron Meridian also greeted the emperor, feeling the atmosphere of the Solar Empire. This place clearly had its own special influence on all who visited it. Olivia realized that he was indeed the emperor. His presence was majestic, and he offered to drop the formalities, inviting them to come and sit. The emperor noticed that Olivia had good manners, and this immediately caught his attention. He could not help but wonder where she had acquired them, for such qualities are not often found. Olivia explained that her nanny was Baroness Meridian, a woman who paid much attention to upbringing and education. It was she who imparted to the girl the basics of good manners and cultural behavior. The emperor also noted that her involvement in the swordsmanship department was likely due to Gianna's influence. Olivia felt a little uneasy, realizing that her knowledge came from a Sioux she had never even seen, but she understood. The emperor, noticing that Olivia now looked healthy, mentioned that he had heard about her ailments. However, now she seemed more confident and mature, not like the girl she had been before. Olivia apologized for disturbing her, but added that she felt much better. As she held the sword close to her, it became clear to her that the knight's path was her choice and her destiny. The emperor was surprised to learn that the crown prince still did not approve of her decision. He thought that Daniel was the one who taught her swordsmanship, but it turned out otherwise. Daniel confirmed that he was the one who trained Olivia, after which the emperor turned to him, noting that he was very similar to Lord Meridian, both in mannerisms and appearance. The Imperial Guard also needed talents like Daniel's, so he asked if he had considered joining their ranks to use his skills for the good of the Empire. The emperor explained that he was worried about how Olivia would fare alone, and suggested that Daniel consider joining the guard to ensure her safety. Daniel replied that if the offer remained valid, he would be glad to remain in the Imperial Guard, especially since it would give him the opportunity to serve a great cause. The emperor asked Daniel what he meant by remain, since this could mean that he could always leave the guard if he wished. Daniel thanked the emperor for the offer, but added that he had taken an oath of allegiance to the Versace family and could not break it, even for the sake of serving in the guard. The emperor tried to convince Daniel that his master would never allow him to swear allegiance to another place, even temporarily, and that such oaths could not be easily changed. Daniel replied that his master had a big heart, and said that if he needed to find work in the capital, he should take advantage of this opportunity. Olivia was a little confused, not understanding why Daniel was saying this while looking at her. The emperor had also noticed their relationship and could easily see that there was something between them. She was happy, and it couldn't help but show. The emperor smiled, watching her reaction, and couldn't help but laugh a little. The emperor found it funny when Daniel spoke of wasting manpower, but at the same time, he knew it was true. Olivia was indeed Daniel's mistress, and that was obvious. The emperor agreed that talented men should rest and use their powers wisely, so Daniel could remain in the guard if he wanted to. He added that even if Daniel only stayed for the time being, while Miss was in the capital, he could begin serving in the Imperial Guard from tomorrow. Then the emperor turned to Olivia and asked if she was all right, and if she felt any discomfort, because he was worried about her health. Olivia replied that they would be honored if His Majesty took care of such talented people as she. She was grateful for the emperor's care. Olivia thought that the emperor resembled the Frog Prince, and frankly, she was glad that she was not involved in the Crown Prince's affairs, preferring to watch things from the sidelines. The Crown Prince is his father's son, and she knows his temperament. It was a pleasant time. The emperor met his niece and got an outstanding night. He hopes that they will come again. Olivia pointed out that he could invite them anytime he wanted, and they would gladly accept the invitation. However, she knew that was not entirely true, and she kept her real thoughts to herself, not daring to voice them. In fact, she had no intention of coming, and did not want him to invite her. Her true reluctance remained hidden, because she did not find the courage to say it out loud, which caused a slight regret. Apparently, their visit took up too much of the emperor's time, and he probably decided that it was not worth inviting them again. Perhaps he realized that such meetings should not be repeated often. The emperor even refused to arrange transport for them from the palace to the residence, leaving them without an escort. They ended up taking a carriage kindly sent by Oscar to continue their journey. Daisy, worried, asked if anything unusual had happened, to which the lady calmly replied that nothing special had happened, although her voice sounded a little more tense than usual. The maid wondered why her mistress was in such a depressed mood. Finally, Olivia couldn't stand it any longer and suddenly cried out that something was constantly tearing apart inside her, as if her soul could not find peace. The reason for her displeasure was interference in the affairs of the crown prince. She was outraged that someone dared to offer the Versace knight to become a scout, which Olivia considered unacceptable. Despite this, she decided not to share her thoughts with Daisy. But the maid concluded that the mistress probably could not speak frankly about it in front of the emperor, which added to the heaviness in her heart. Olivia, trying to remain calm, remarked that she no longer cared. However, she did mention that the real problem was Daniel, who had suddenly decided to join the Imperial Guard from the following day. When Daisy learned of this, she was furious and said that this was absolutely unacceptable. She believed that Daniel completely did not understand his position as the heir of Meridian, and that such decisions could have serious consequences. Daisy was sure that if he found out about this, he would immediately go to the state border. Her indignation grew because she could not allow such carelessness. The maid, despite her kindness to everyone, showed genuine dissatisfaction. Her indignation sounded loud because she did not hide her disappointment with what was happening. Daniel tried to explain that his service in the Imperial Guard was a temporary measure. He wanted Lady Olivia not to worry, since it was only related to her stay here. He assured her that despite any difficulties, he would cope. For him, the confidence and support of Knight Daisy were more important than any imperial decree, and he did not intend to let her or anyone else down. That's why he promised to do his best not to make a single mistake. After these words, he turned to Olivia, trying to understand her attitude towards her service. Daniel emphasized that his temporary assignment to the guard probably did not cause Olivia any inconvenience. His words were calm, although there was a hidden hope that she would understand. The lady noted that everything was fine. He was a good boy. She pretended on purpose that she didn't like it. It seemed to her that he was asking her about it. Daniel got his new job thanks to Olivia's support. Her advice and help were decisive, so he felt it was his duty to thank her with a gift when he received his first salary. Smiling, Daniel asked Olivia what she would like to receive. However, his sister Daisy, clearly displeased, nudged her brother and noted that such questions were not accepted. The choice of a gift should be a surprise. Daisy advised him to choose a gift himself, which she assured him should reflect his feelings for Olivia. Daniel thought about it. He had never encountered such a situation before and did not know how to do it correctly. Olivia, having learned about Daniel's plans, reassured him. She assured him that it did not matter to her what he chose, because everything from him would be dear to her. She added that she would always take care of him, no matter the circumstances. That day, the three of them, Olivia, Daniel, and Daisy, talked for a long time. They shared thoughts and laughed, enjoying rare moments of unity. It was the first time in a long time that they spent time together in such harmony. Olivia remembered how they used to spend time like this often, especially when Daniel accompanied her. Until last summer, these were their small but very precious rituals that she always remembered with warmth. Although much had changed since then, some things had remained the same. She believed that even times spent in darkness or hardship could become bright if you cherished the moments that brought joy. Mrs. Olivia arrived at the Versace residence. The house had been a gift to Alfred from Empress Cecilia after their wedding. Its grandeur and beauty made a strong impression on those who saw it for the first time. The emperor's special relationship with Cecilia made the residence unique. A huge garden drowning in flowers, and a luxurious house reminiscent of an imperial palace. This place reflected not only power, but also love. The emperor brought his wife here for their honeymoon, intending to return often. However, Cecilia followed the count to the territory of Hershey, and now this place holds memories of the past. When Olivia arrived, the servants, including Fred, who had been the first empress's chamberlain, greeted her joyfully. They were looking forward to serving her again and were eager to show their respect. Olivia asked Fred for help and care. She introduced Daniel, who would now serve in the Imperial Guard, as well as Daisy Le Debon's boss. It was a special occasion for everyone. The servants took the opportunity to serve their mistress again, with great pride. Rose, Fred's wife, stood out in particular, having once been Empress Cecilia's personal servant and remaining loyal to the family. Rose greeted Olivia warmly, calling it an honor. She fondly remembered the times when she served the Empress and was glad to meet her mistress again, promising care and loyalty. The story of Rose and Fred left a deep mark. They remained loyal to Olivia until the very end, protecting her. Their devotion became an example of true service and sincere affection. Olivia asked the servants to take care of her again. Daisy, in a burst of joy, rushed to hug them, showing how much she missed them. These were touching and sincere moments of meeting. Rose was very excited to hear of Olivia's arrival. She also missed Fred and was looking forward to this day to feel the warmth of family and service again. Daniel knew that Olivia had a hard time at the academy. Living there for 3 years, she felt at home thanks to the care of Rose and Fred, who were like parents to her, helping and supporting her. Now, Daisy, looking like an ordinary 12-year-old girl, enlivened the atmosphere. Her spontaneity and enthusiasm confused Olivia, who even blushed slightly. Rose, noticing this, suggested that everyone go into the house, where food had already been prepared. She wanted the lady to feel comfortable and be able to rest after the journey. Olivia invited everyone, and Daniel, noticing her flushed face, asked worriedly if she was okay. He was worried about her well-being and did not want to remain indifferent. Olivia, smiling, assured him that she felt fine. She wanted him to smile because his smile was the most important thing to her. It brought her joy and peace. However, there was a note of anxiety in her words. She mentioned that such moments of calm may be short-lived, as dark clouds seem to gather over them. The traditions that the empire passed down from generation to generation over several centuries were of such grand scale that many believed that the academy was responsible for this. The second head of the Versace family claimed that all aristocrats were required to attend the academy. This was originally intended as a way to strengthen imperial power and exert influence on the northern regions. However, if we look at this process from a broader perspective, we can see that the empire constantly attracted young and talented professionals who then contributed to the development of the country. Aristocrats who received a quality education were actively involved in political activities, holding important positions and influencing processes in the state, which contributed to the progress of the country. In a country where education is an important and powerful tool, like a strong reed, people can live long and happily overcoming difficulties. This knowledge helps to survive and prosper in any conditions. From this perspective, the academy certainly deserved praise. It served as the foundation on which the empire's future was built, producing quality specialists and leaders. Olivia, however, could not understand why she felt so sad despite everything that was happening. There was a vague melancholy in her soul that she could not explain despite all her determination. Olivia greeted Rora and asked how she slept. It was her first conversation with the girl, and she felt a little awkward, but tried to be polite and friendly. Rora was shocked to learn that the lady knew her name Olivia. In turn, noted that she remembers many people because it is important to remember those who are close, even if it is just a casual acquaintance. In the castle, Olivia had servants assigned to her to wait on her. Among them was Rora, a young girl whom Daisy took care of, giving her special attention and care over time. At the Smackhall Academy in the dormitory, all students wore a uniform depending on their department. However, the Department of Magic was an exception, as its students were required to wear only white uniforms. The other departments wore a deep blue uniform with various details such as waistcoats, buttons, and other elements that distinguished them from each other, symbolizing their affiliation with one or another faculty. Olivia, who was going to study ball handling, had to wear a silver uniform. Her department had 2 uniforms each for different occasions and events. One uniform was intended for school events and classes within the academy, while the other was more casual, intended for training, so as not to restrict movement and ensure comfort during the learning process. The aristocrats did not receive their uniforms directly from the school, but bought them from the studio. This gave them the opportunity to try on and choose what would really suit them, since all the suits were created by the famous designer Juliet. Rora, delighted with Olivia's new uniform, said that it fits perfectly and suits her mistress very well. Olivia thanked her for the compliment, smiling, and feeling that she would be comfortable in this place. The maid Violetta, who shared a room with Olivia, suddenly asked if she could clean the room. This surprised the mistress, as she did not expect that someone would be so attentive to her personal space. Violetta was the maid Olivia shared a room with, and last night, she asked her if she could clean up. Olivia was surprised by the question, but replied that it wasn't necessary if the room was in order. Each department head at the academy, as well as their deputies, receives single rooms. Olivia, who entered without taking entrance exams, was provided with a double room, which was rare. If the lady had any preferences about the style of the room or the need for any furniture, she should have said, so Olivia thought that it would be worth decorating the room to make it more comfortable and pleasant to live in. Olivia said she didn't care, so she asked me to tell her that they could decorate the room however they wanted. And she also asked to ask Oscar to order one sleeper sofa bed and table, similar to the ones she used in the Versace castle. And she can also go and choose a table, a wardrobe, and a bed for herself. She can leave until the evening, because now she is her faithful servant here. This is a bribe so that she treats her well. Rora was very grateful to the lady, Olivia. In turn told her that it was not worth buying two cheap things. For her as a woman with a high sense of dignity, it is important what she uses in everyday life. It can be said that this is provided as social assistance for workers who work for the benefit of the masters. Such a gesture is aimed at making their lives easier and helping with important everyday issues. Rora really looked after Milady well, always supporting her at the right moment. She can do the shopping together with Oscar, because he has had a lot of work lately, and this has brought him a lot of stress. Rora wished the lady a good journey and said goodbye to her. She could not help but express her gratitude and care, because Olivia was not only her lady, but also an important person in her life. Olivia's first order of business was to visit the swordsmanship department. It was an important visit that she could not postpone. She understood that time was a valuable resource that needed to be managed wisely. Olivia was very glad that she had a map, which she could easily recognize the address she needed. This saved her from unnecessary worries, allowing her to calmly move in the right direction without wasting time searching. However, when Olivia approached the department's corridor, she noticed that it was completely empty. This surprised her, as it was usually crowded. It was unclear why there was no one there this time. Olivia couldn't figure out what the reason was. Perhaps the department staff was just about to start their work. After all, it takes time for everything to be ready, and perhaps they were planning to start classes only at dawn. At that moment, Olivia noticed that the department's uniform was similar to her own. This gave her confidence because she felt a part of this place despite all the uncertainty and silence around her. Time was still on her side and she could wait. However, Olivia couldn't understand why everyone was in such a hurry. Why was everyone running? That was the real question that was bothering her at that moment. Olivia approached the 5th Street of Tamir, where the office of the chief of La Depoche was located. This was an important point on her route, and she knew exactly what she had to do next. Everything was organized according to plan. Oscar asked again if Olivia had really said that she would go shopping with him. The girl confirmed that she had, but added that if he was busy, she would go alone so as not to waste his time. Oscar disagreed and said that it would not happen. He was determined and was not going to let Olivia go shopping alone. He wanted to be with her to solve all the problems together. Oscar continued that Olivia had told him to choose from the things he would choose, which meant he was already packed and ready to go. He was not going to wait, but on the contrary, he wanted to go as soon as possible to find the necessary things. Rora noted that this was true, but she also noticed that Oscar was busy. He quickly asked her not to upset him further. He was clearly agitated, which only increased his desire to act as quickly as possible. Olivia was absolutely horrified when she heard Oscar say that she had upset him. She hadn't meant to upset him, and this statement had really shocked her. She couldn't understand how she could disappoint him. Oscar said that was true, and added that his favorite thing to do was spend money, especially other people's money. He said it with such enthusiasm that Olivia realized how much he enjoyed the process. The girl was shocked, not believing her ears, but Oscar added that everything would be fine. In his opinion, this was a great way to relieve the accumulated stress and free himself from all the worries that were weighing on his shoulders. Olivia was happy to hear these words and agreed with Oscar. She decided that she should enjoy the shopping process and not worry about all the difficulties that could arise in the future. After hours of shopping, Oscar finally asked Olivia if she needed anything else. She replied that she had already bought everything and there were no more things on her list. Then, he decided to take action. Oscar suggested that if nothing else was needed, then it was worth buying something for Daisy. It was a logical step, and Olivia supported his proposal. Understanding how important it was not to forget about loved ones, he asked that everything be sent to the Versace residence and that what was left be sent to Daisy Meridian's house. Oscar knew they had specific plans, and this decision was dictated by business necessity. They had a bed that had been used by the Daisies at the Versace palace. Oscar decided that it should also be sent to the residence so that everything would be in its place and not left unattended. Rora asked Mr. Oscar to slow down a bit. She was worried that if they continued at the same pace, their expenses would increase significantly, and she might be fired for overspending. Rora tried to convey to him the importance of saving, fearing the consequences for her work. She knew that if they were not careful with money, she would not be able to escape punishment. She explained that it was important to avoid unnecessary expenses. If Olivia found out about excessive spending, it would lead to unpleasant consequences for everyone, including her. Oscar assured Rora that there was nothing to worry about. Everything was under control, and she should not worry. He insisted that the situation was not as critical as she thought. He recalled that Miss Olivia values people who manage money wisely. It is important to her that finances are used effectively without unnecessary waste. Oscar added that it was his own money earned together with Mrs. Daisy, so there was no need to worry so much. It was important to enjoy life and spend wisely without unnecessary worries. Rora understood that Oscar meant that if you earn a lot, you can spend it. He continued shopping, ignoring her requests. He was confident in his actions. At this time, a guy passing by the academy noticed that this time Arnold was again in charge of discipline for the newcomers. He was not happy about it, considering the event a waste of time. The guy expressed his dissatisfaction, saying that he was already tired of these meaningless trainings. He did not understand why all this was necessary, because for beginners, it still does not give real results. He also asked Arnold if he knew the last time a Versace daughter came to the academy as a recruit. Arnold thought about it, not knowing about it before. Arnold slowed down a bit and asked when exactly it had happened. He hadn't known about anyone from the Versace family being a recruit, and it had surprised him a bit. The boy also said that the sister of Mr. Kyle, whom he had praised so much, was now studying in the sword arts department. This news caught Arnold's attention. Arnold was very pleased with this news. Now he would have a chance to see in action the swordsmanship that Master Kyle had boasted about so much. He had been looking forward to this moment with impatience. Arnold was sure that Mr. Kyle cared very much about his younger sister. It was a well-known fact in the Empire, and everyone understood that he himself taught her this skill. He even imagined Mr. Kyle personally training his sister, because for him, her safety and development came first. This strengthened his confidence in her talent. Arnold couldn't believe that such a precious sister could be entrusted to someone else. He didn't understand why he felt so tense at the thought. At this time, his friend, noticing that Arnold was deep in thought, said that he was going to move on. Arnold continued to think about the daughter of the Versace family and her role in the academy. The thought of Master Kyle's swordsman's younger sister never left him. It filled him with joy and excitement, as he was curious to know what kind of person she really was. While Arnold continued to ponder, Mistress Olivia was still late. Her delay did not bother him, but he could not get rid of thoughts about Mr. Kyle's sister. Smack Hall Academy, the square in front of the arts department building, where swordsmanship classes take place, looked majestic. Right in front of it was a large square where students gathered for training. Arnold knew they had arrived only 13 minutes before class started, and he wondered if they understood all the reasons why they had to be here so early. It was important for discipline. Anyone who was late had to assume the prone position, which was the punishment for late arrival. This rule allowed no exceptions, and it had its purpose: to train discipline and endurance. These were basic exercises that, despite their simplicity, were considered essential to the training. All students had to master them before they could move on to more advanced sword and martial arts training. Olivia watched with surprise and no small amount of shock. Even though they were only freshmen, such strict requirements seemed too harsh to her. She hated physical exercise, especially the kind that put stress on her body. Even if a student arrived before the lesson began, he had to simply stand and wait. And if someone was late, he could not avoid punishment. The prone position was mandatory. This rule could not be circumvented. Suddenly, someone came up to Olivia and greeted her, but it wasn't what she expected. It turned out that the guy was sitting in the tree behind her and decided to talk. It was strange but also interesting at the same time. He introduced himself as Ray Olivia. A little taken aback, replied that her name was Olivia. It was a brief and polite introduction, although she wasn't sure if she should continue the conversation with this man. Wasting no time, Ray jumped down from the tree and asked him, smiling, if he was really handsome. Olivia was stunned. She didn't expect anyone to ask such questions at such a level. Olivia, a little taken aback, thought that such stupid questions were a thing of the past. She didn't know how to react to his directness and slight impudence. He didn't lose his composure and continued asking if he was handsome enough for Olivia to want to marry him. This was even more unexpected, and the girl simply didn't know what to answer to such a proposal. Olivia replied that everyone has their own taste, and she has her own preferences. So she politely declined, saying that she did not consider Ray as a possible partner. This was her honest answer. Ray, without taking offense, began to wonder what exactly Olivia thought of him. He wanted to know more about her opinion, but he was not sure that she would give him an honest answer. Olivia thought for a moment, assessing Ray's appearance. His round blue eyes, lilac hair, and porcelain skin were indeed eye-catching. However, that was not what made her change her mind. Ray's looks were on par with those guys who had recently graduated from Manhattan Academy. He looked pretty cute, but oddly enough, Olivia didn't have much interest in him. Despite this, Olivia decided to be frank and said that she already had a man whom she considered her future husband. It was that same Daniel, and she could not forget him so easily. She knew she couldn't leave Daniel so easily because her feelings for him were sincere. Falling in love with someone else was impossible for her, and she wasn't going to change her principles. Ray couldn't understand why all the other students were crawling along, not understanding the importance of speed. He thought they needed to move faster to make it to all their classes and practices. Olivia decided that now was the time to go for a run. Her task was to blend in with the other students so as not to stand out and not draw attention to her slow pace. Olivia decided to ask Ray how good his magical abilities were. He happily confirmed that he really did have the power, and this gave him confidence in his abilities. Olivia suggested to Ray that he move her to the middle of the newcomers group so that she could run with them. It was her decision, and she hoped that it would help her adapt to the training process faster. Ray replied that if she wanted, he would be happy to fulfill her request. He was ready to help, and his confidence in his abilities left no doubt that he would be able to fulfill Olivia's request. The girl closed her eyes a little, and at that moment it became clear to her that she really was in the crowd. She felt that her movement was irreversible, but this did not cause her to panic. She realized that she could now run along with the newcomers without unnecessary awkwardness. There was no sign of trouble, and no one seemed to notice her presence in the group. However, Arnold said that one lap had been missed, and they had to keep running. Everyone had to do it again, even though fatigue was beginning to set in. There was only one more lap left, and they would continue training. The girl could still feel how that red head was affecting her, causing discomfort and tension that could not be ignored. Despite all this, she felt grateful that the run had ended thanks to Ray. It was a relief, and now she had to take a moment to thank him for his help. Ray said that she had been acting stupid even more so than he had expected, thinking that she had long since forgotten him. He was surprised by her actions and how she had acted in this situation. She was as beautiful as ever, and her audacity did not escape his attention. Ray always admired her confidence and self-assurance, which only added to her attractiveness. Olivia said that if a person wants to know if he has met someone with whom he can be happy, then it is enough to simply feel how his heart beats faster and he can hardly breathe. If someone meets such a person, their heart will tell them that they must marry them without hesitation. Olivia was of the opinion that such feelings cannot be ignored. At the moment, everything was going exactly as she described. It seemed that she was the same person, But why she didn't have the same feeling she couldn't understand. Arnold thought the newbies were tired, but in reality, they hadn't done anything serious yet. The training had just begun, and there was still a lot of work to do before it was over. She could feel the heat coming down on her. The smells of the place were becoming more and more unpleasant, and her stomach was clenching with a hunger pain that demanded attention and food. One of the guys said that if they were not going to behave decently and be real fighters, then they should go back. There is no place for the weak and the indecisive here. He offered them the opportunity to challenge him if they thought they could defeat him. He was willing to meet anyone who would test their strength against him. If there were no newcomers willing to fight, he would choose the one who would continue. He was sure that none of them would dare to do so, but he was ready to act. He noticed a girl with pink hair and told her to come forward. He asked her to draw her sword, preparing for further action, not doubting her ability to cope with the task. Olivia remembered this girl because she was one of the last ones left in the training process. Despite the fatigue, she did not give up and continued to fight until the very end. However, her stance and sword technique left much to be desired. It was obvious, and it was not difficult to assume that her patience would not last long at this pace. It wouldn't be surprising if the girl soon felt a cramp in her legs from fatigue. Olivia hoped that everything was okay with her, and she had already heard requests to replace her with a more trained fighter. Many people came to take Olivia's place in the training. Albert noticed that there were many principled and determined individuals among them who wanted to save the princess. The pink princess appeared with the intention of learning how to wield a sword, although some believed that she was simply there for the bribes and had no interest in actual training. Olivia, in turn, stated that her intentions were quite serious, and she came to master the art of handling a sword, and not for any other purposes. She had no intention of sitting on the sidelines. She wanted Mr. Albert to take care of her and go out to practice with her to evaluate her efforts and progress. At the end of a long and intense sparring session, the girl felt very tired. She could no longer continue with the same energy as at the beginning of the training. For Albert, this was a minor obstacle, but for Olivia, who was just beginning to master the art of the sword, such efforts were quite difficult and exhausting. After a tense fight, he managed to knock the sword out of her hands, and Olivia was even scared when her weapon fell right in front of her. She froze, not knowing how to react. Olivia couldn't understand why her sword was in front of her eyes, right in front of her feet. Confused, she bowed low to Albert, acknowledging his skill. She noted that Albert had done a good job and expressed her respect for his professionalism, understanding that his actions were dictated by his skill. Albert noted that she had tried her best, but still, in his opinion, it was clear that the level of the newcomers left much to be desired, and he expected more from the beginners. He was worried that there might be someone among the newcomers who, like Olivia, had not yet mastered the basic skills, including how to hold a sword properly. This left him a little disappointed. Albert asked if there were any girls among the newcomers who already knew how to hold a sword correctly and could demonstrate a higher level of skill during training. At that moment, he noticed Olivia, who had white hair among the newcomers. He pointed his sword at her, showing that she had caught his attention. Albert inquired about her, asking if she was ready to continue training and improving her skills. He pointed at her, asking what she planned to do next. He asked if she needed the prince's support, and at that moment, they began to discuss rumors about her because she was a famous person in certain circles. Everyone around immediately realized that they were talking about Olivia Versace and began to whisper because her last name was widely known in the world, and this added to her fame. Because of this, all eyes focused on Olivia. She did not expect her training to attract such interest because she planned to go through it quietly and without unnecessary attention. Olivia thought that there would be no problems if she acted independently, ignoring the main characters, and not drawing unnecessary attention to herself. However, she took up the sword with determination and declared that if Albert challenged her, she was ready to accept it, not wanting to retreat or show weakness. Arnold asked the girl's name, but she was slow to answer, deciding it was best to hold off. She wanted to keep this moment to herself, not revealing personal information right away. Olivia looked at him and wondered if she should even tell her name to the man she was about to fight. The answer obviously didn't seem important at this point. Turning to him, the girl explained that she was part of the sword arts department at the Smackhall Academy. and as she believed, she should show respect to her elder. Olivia was willing to be polite if Arnold would also adhere to these standards. However, he did not even bother to demonstrate basic etiquette in communicating with younger people, which clearly upset her. She added that politeness does not matter in combat. As her teacher, the elder, always taught her that what matters most is determination and strength at the moment of confrontation. Taking off her uniform, the girl looked at him and said that she hoped that he would take care of her in the upcoming fight, no matter how it sounded. But she was ready for the fight. Arnold advised Olivia to attack first, to which she replied with a smile that she would refuse this role. However, despite her words, she still decided to take the initiative into her own hands. She began to attack, and with ease and a confident smile, she continued to fight side by side with him. Demonstrating her skills, Arnold did not expect that she would be able to prove herself in battle so quickly. The guy was stunned. He couldn't believe that a newbie could be so strong. It was a real surprise for him, as he didn't expect such a level of resistance. Olivia showed amazing moves. Her movements were perfect, and all the spectators sincerely supported Arnold, hoping for his victory. The atmosphere was tense, everyone was rooting for him, but her skill was impressive. Arnold didn't even suspect that the girl was so energetic and capable of such actions. It was a surprise for him, because his opponent didn't look that strong. Arnold's opponent was Kyle's younger sister, and this did not seem strange, because she, like her brother, was trained in the art of martial arts. Mikhail, her mentor, was Kyle's friend and a professor at the academy. Olivia's style was similar to her older brother's. There was something similar in their approach, both in their fighting style and their temperament. Perhaps they both had similar character traits. Theo, who was watching this, did not understand what was going on. She asked what exactly was happening, because Arnold seemed like a simpler person compared to Kyle. However, Olivia handled the sword perfectly. It was truly amazing. The girl demonstrated incredible techniques that she had learned from Daniel. He was her mentor and played an important role in her development as a fighter. But in battle now, she wasn't using only Daniel's techniques. Once on the field, she was using skills that Kyle, her older brother, had probably passed on to her, which added unexpected effectiveness to her actions. It is possible that Olivia mastered the techniques of two people at once, her brother and Daniel. This gave her a unique advantage and allowed her to be more flexible in combat using a variety of styles. Her abilities were impressive. Arnold, although he was at an average level, still felt that her skill was beyond that of a normal beginner. She could clearly reach a high level. The basics of her training were at a good level, and her reaction speed was simply amazing. Every movement was precise and fast, which created the impression of incredible readiness. It might take some time, but her abilities were so impressive that she could easily be called a master. She was clearly ready for new challenges and tests. Olivia felt her strength was waning. She began to feel very hungry, and her vision began to swim, indicating that her body was in need of rest and nourishment. Arnold, noticing that the girl had suddenly gone quiet, wasted no time. He immediately began to attack, hoping to take advantage of her moment of weakness. He was sure that he would be able to catch her off guard. Olivia was scared, realizing that she was having trouble concentrating because of her hunger. She tried to control herself, but she was weakened, which prevented her from fully concentrating on defending herself. It was hard to comprehend what was happening at that moment. The audience was stunned by how quickly everything was changing, and no one could tell exactly what would happen next. The atmosphere was tense. However, the girl realized that she could still regain the initiative despite her hunger. This chance became an opportunity for her. She was able to retreat for a moment and escape from his attacks. Despite her physical condition and hunger, Olivia did the impossible. This was her chance, and she did not let it pass. Her willpower played a decisive role. The newcomer won, which amazed everyone present. No one expected that she, despite all the difficulties, would be able to cope with Arnold and emerge victorious from the fight. Olivia extended her hand to Arnold, smiling gratefully and noting that he had played well. She was sure that his actions deserved respect and recognition. She introduced herself as Olivia Versace. At that moment, Arnold blushed, smiling shyly. It was an unexpected turn for him, because he did not know who was standing in front of him. Arnold also noted that Olivia had done a great job and introduced himself. He felt that her actions were respectable, and this impressed him greatly. He added that he hoped that today's situation would not cause misunderstandings. The morning training and his actions were quite normal for the academy, and there was nothing strange about it. Olivia agreed with him, noting that it was the tradition of the swordsmanship department. She also emphasized that it was her duty to follow these traditions, and she understood the rules very well. She reminded them that she too had an obligation to uphold the department's traditions. It was part of her learning process, and she was proud to be able to uphold those norms. Olivia had apparently done her job and seemed to have made her point clearly and confidently. If she said it was right, then it was right. In any case, the duel was over, and it was time for everyone to leave. Before leaving the place, Olivia asked Arnold for a favor, saying that she had a request. Her words sounded serious, and she immediately attracted the attention of the guy who asked in surprise what exactly she was talking about. Olivia said that she was terribly hungry, and so she asked Arnold to take care of her food. Hunger had become an important issue for her, and she asked him to help her satisfy it. Olivia felt a little awkward bothering Arnold with such a request, but unfortunately, she had no other choice. Arnold couldn't refuse, and he promised to take care of her needs because it was his responsibility. Arnold, thinking about what he should do, thought of the palace known as the Palace of the Sun. He believed that if his master wanted his servant to investigate something related to this place, he could do so without asking unnecessary questions. However, the emperor quickly interrupted his thoughts and declared that this was enough. It was now important to concentrate on another matter, and the emperor directed his thoughts in another direction. The emperor wanted to know how Olivia was doing at the academy, as he had noticed that she was perhaps dissatisfied with something. He felt that her mood was not the best, and this required attention. The servant thought that perhaps the master was referring to her relationship with someone around her. However, the emperor was quick to admit that he could simply call her to resolve the matter directly. The servant, noticing his master's concern, asked him what excuse he was going to use to talk to Olivia. He noticed that her look was similar to his sister's, which made him remember her character. The gentleman, with some displeasure, noted that Olivia was not Princess Cecilia, and therefore there was no need to resort to such a method as using anger or aggression in conversation. The emperor remarked that Olivia was very beautiful and that there was nothing in her appearance that could remind one of the counts. He added that only Count Versace could resemble someone, but it was rather only a superficial resemblance. The emperor did not understand where this idea came from. He remembered a certain barbarian who seemed almost different from all the others, and his view of the world was a little strange, which could be related to his age. The emperor continued to reflect on this, noting that Olivia was an excellent daughter-in-law. He thought about her virtues and the qualities she brought to the family, and this made him value her even more. The servant was extremely surprised by these thoughts of the emperor, and without hiding his surprise, asked him again. He was interested in how the emperor assessed the situation and what he planned to do next. The candidates for the crown prince's wife had already been decided upon and were currently undergoing training. The emperor knew this, and his decision regarding Olivia became increasingly important. However, the emperor still believed that it was always possible to change the situation if necessary. He knew that there were ways to influence the choice, and that some circumstances could be adjusted at the right time. The man said that His Highness should reconsider his position, because feuding with Versace would not bring any benefit. The conflict does not strengthen their positions. On the contrary, it can harm. The emperor mused that if Olivia agreed, it would be interesting to see what would be left of the rest of the family. All his sons were attractive, and seemed to have inherited all the best qualities of their father. The emperor told Milo that he was not cursing him now, and that this was simply his usual mood. The man did not take the hint, but was sure that this was not an emotion to be taken seriously. The Imperial family had always had problems with their ancestors. All the heirs had similar temperaments. But if he gathered all the princes together, his wife, Empress Cecilia, would most likely leave him. The emperor remarked that there was no need to worry about this. The empress had rarely appeared at public events lately, and so his advice was to leave her alone and not worry. Olivia was finally full, and the weather was so nice that it made her smile. The pleasant feeling of a good day helped her relax and forget about business. a little enjoying the moment. Olivia felt well rested, and now she thought that returning to Hershey would be a great idea. She thought that if everything went like this, she would be able to return safely without meeting the main characters. The main character studies humanities, and the main character is involved in politics, so their paths are unlikely to cross. This saved Olivia from unnecessary worries about a possible meeting with him. Olivia had entered a year later than her classmates, and now their ages were no longer the same. This put her in a slightly different position, and she was sure that they would not have a common destiny now. After passing her exams, Olivia decided that it would be better to graduate early. She wanted to end this stage of her life and move on. Suddenly, a strange girl approached her and asked if she was Mrs. Olivia. Olivia did not immediately recognize this girl, but then she remembered that this was the same girl with pink hair. She remembered her from the meeting and with a smile greeted the lady, feeling that this was not an accident. The girl, who introduced herself as Jessica Ruana, admitted that she had seen Olivia fight. She was impressed by her skills and how cool she was, which inspired her to want to be friends with such an amazing person. Jessica thought it might be a little cheeky of her, but she really wanted to be Olivia's friend. Her blushing face betrayed her emotions, and she hoped she wouldn't be rejected. Perhaps it was her strong voice and her fortitude in battle, or perhaps Jessica simply felt that Olivia was particularly close to her. Either way, she was happy to be able to talk to her. Olivia didn't immediately understand what was causing the girl to react this way, but she burst out laughing. Jessica was a little confused by this, not knowing how to properly respond to such an unusual reaction. Olivia offered Jessica friendship, and the girl, barely holding back tears, could not believe her happiness. She happily accepted the offer and immediately felt her heart fill with gratitude. Olivia remarked that it seemed like they should go to class since time was running out. Jessica, of course, couldn't help but agree, but her spirits were high after such an important event in her life. Jessica inquired about what had driven Miss Olivia to study the art of swordsmanship. She was genuinely interested in her motives and hoped that Olivia would share this decision with her. Olivia didn't know the exact reason for her choice, but she decided to find out why Jessica wanted to learn swords. Jessica explained that her goal was to become stronger, and she believed that this was the only way to achieve that. Olivia stressed that this is a really tough path, and Jessica should be prepared for difficulties. She acknowledged that the girl is very brave to decide to take on such challenges and expressed admiration for her determination. Olivia thought that this could mean that Jessica was simply running away from something she couldn't avoid, like an arranged marriage. Perhaps she was trying to avoid having her life decided by other people. Olivia noticed that it seemed that Jessica was hiding here in this school to avoid forced decisions. Learning to wield a sword was not easy, but Olivia also chose a difficult path to escape her own fate. Olivia, feeling a sense of affinity with the girl, ran her hand over her head, trying to support her. She thought that Jessica might understand better, since they were both, in essence, trying to escape something difficult in their lives. Olivia said that if Jessica started crying, she would leave without her. She didn't want her to dwell on her past and to keep moving forward despite her fears and worries. Olivia urged the girl to follow her and hurry, because there was no time to think. She knew that they had to go to the academic buildings and that every delay would cost them important time. The weather in Timir was always incredibly good in spring, and this day was no exception. The weather filled Olivia with a feeling of lightness and joy, creating an atmosphere of comfort and peace with her friend. Second-year class of the Sword Arts Department. As Arnold thought it was Mr. Kyle's younger sister. She is incredibly strong, as amazing as Master Kyle's skill. By the way, he saw Daniel's skill. I suddenly approached him and asked if he was okay. The second friend also came up and noted that anyone can lose, so there is no need to be upset. The guy wondered why she had the same skills as Daniel. The friend said that he knew that he would still have many chances. That's right, no one can know. Maybe he will lose again. It's not such a problem. He saw it all thanks to Kyle. This girl acted arrogant because she has power, but her temperament is completely... Then Arnold grabbed him and said that it seemed to him that his eyes were given for decoration. It was unclear how he could say such a thing when he saw that Mistress Olivia herself gave him instructions for the duel. The guy got really scared and started saying that he was really wrong. Arnold dismissed it and said that he had a completely different point of view on the matter than they did. His opponent is Lord Kyle's younger sister. That's to be expected from his younger sister and daughter. He knows himself and his enemy. It is obvious that she is even trained in Daniel's skill to find his words in place. First-year class, someone seems to be discussing Olivia. The teacher told everyone to take their places. He was Samuel Lang, the professor of the first-year students responsible for their morning preparation. From now on, they must understand that in this department, it is not enough to simply be good with a sword. Those who fall behind in at least one subject will have to repeat a year. During the military discipline, they will study international relations, management, economic leadership, now they know about it. Military history will give them a chance to learn about what can be gained and lost through war, and will also teach them to be alert to the mistakes of soldiers. They will also study mathematics and physics, sometimes even students who are not serious about such subjects. He sends such students to preparatory courses for knights. Hi! I thought that it really is like a military academy. It will be difficult to graduate just by swinging a sword. Well, the teacher also said that having outstanding swordsmanship abilities is not enough. Soldiers who do not have the courage to decide and think for themselves can only become instruments in the hands of a tyrant. The supreme control of military affairs is not a single person. He hopes that his students will become soldiers for the people and not pawns in the hands of the authorities. Soldiers who can think for themselves and make decisions outside of an egalitarian society are what the children of aristocrats, the most privileged class in the empire, are taught here. A huge amount of confidence they must attach to the names of the professors responsible for their subjects, what the schedule is. Tomorrow morning, there will be division into groups according to their sword skills, high, intermediate, and those who will study the basics. The guy wanted to answer this question. He asked if there was a place where he could train in the evening. The teacher said that they could use the practice area behind the building, as well as the hall where they had practiced this morning. If they apply, they will be given time to use it for 1 semester. Olivia asked if anyone could use it if they applied. The teacher said that priority is given to the 10 students who are in the high-level group, so she must show the best results in tomorrow's competition for placement. If so, then tomorrow during the distribution, everything must be done well. If the distribution is based on abilities, then she will definitely not end up in the same class with Jessica. Everyone was talking about the fact that this semester, Miss Versace had entered the sword arts department. They say she easily beat Arnold, but she got into trouble from the very first day. Then a guy approached them and asked if they were students of the sword arts department. If so, then they shouldn't call Olivia. Olivia's lessons were over, so she was already thinking about what she should do. But suddenly, some guys came up to her and said that there was a guy with silver hair outside looking for her. Olivia was shocked she remembered the silver hair and couldn't believe it.